Chapter 734. Under Tanjing's lead, Noah entered the archery department of Sui Kun Yuan Academy and arrived at an extremely spacious venue. It was a spacious venue with a wooden floor. Shelves were placed around it, and the space in the middle was completely empty. In front of them was an open-air grassland with walls on both sides. The walls continued until they were more than 10 meters away from the end point. This was naturally the place to practice archery. At the front of the spacious wooden floor near the open-air grassland was a place for the members of the archery department to aim. In front of the walls at the end of the open-air grassland, there were targets. Just as Tanjing had said, perhaps it was because it was too early, but there was no one in the archery department. The commander left after I arrived. Tanjing, who welcomed Noah in, said to Noah in her usual soft voice. So, we are the only ones here now. Perhaps because she felt that her words were full of ambiguity, Tanjing blushed and quickly changed the topic. Mr. Noah, have you learned archery before? Just call me Noah. I'm not used to calling me Mr. Noah all the time. Noah shook his head and looked at the targets in front of him. I haven't learned archery before, but I've dabbled in shooting before. Shooting? Tanjing didn't expect Noah to suddenly say such a word, so she couldn't react in time. Do you mean the kind of gun? What? You don't believe me? Noah said to Tanjing with a half-smile. Don't look at me like that, I'm quite accurate with my shooting. To be precise, with the help of his sensory ability, Noah couldn't shoot accurately even if he wanted to. It was like turning on a radar to scan the surroundings. For shooting, it was too obvious that he could use his sensory ability to assist him. Noah didn't even need to aim deliberately. He just needed to follow the feedback from his sensory ability, set up his gun in front of the target, and pull the trigger. That was all he needed to do. Therefore, Noah's shooting could not be said to be accurate at all. It should be said to be cheating. Without the assistance of his sensory abilities, Noah's shooting would probably not be as good as those who had specially trained for this. Then, do you want to give it a try? Jian Tanjing suggested. If you have a foundation in shooting, then you should be able to use a good bow. As she spoke, Tanjing did not even give Noah time to respond. She went to the side of the bow rack, took down a wooden peach bow, and then pulled out a few arrows from the side. She cutely held them in front of her and came to Noah with a shy smile on her face. If you are interested, I can teach you how to draw a bow. In the eyes of the layman, the so-called bow and arrow was as simple as setting up the bow, knocking an arrow, aiming, and shooting. However, real archery, as long as the posture is a little wrong, it will affect the accuracy of shooting. The strength of the bow is also particular. It is not just blindly pulling the string to the full and shooting it out. The strength is too big and too small, which will also affect the final accuracy. Therefore, drawing a bow and arrow is a knowledge, even if it is not as good as sniper rifles, which need to confirm various atmospheres and wind directions. There are many things to pay attention to. Noah, who understood this, was more or less interested. If it won't cause you trouble, it doesn't matter if you try it a little. No, how could it? Jian Tanjing shook her head and immediately seemed to be happy to give the bow and arrow in her hand to Noah. Please pay attention to your safety. Jian Tanjing seems to like archery very much. She is sincerely happy to be able to teach others how to use a bow. Noah naturally will not pour cold water on Jian Tanjing. Under the gentle whisper of Jian Tanjing, after learning the basic posture and arrow skills, he turned his head and once again looked at the target in front of the wall at the end of the open-air grassland. Frankly speaking, that distance is only moderate for ordinary people. However, for Noah, who has been strengthened by the protozoan virus, such as vision, night vision, and so on, that can only be regarded as a very close distance. At this distance, even without the assistance of the sensory ability, Noah is confident that he can hit the bull's eye. So, Noah simply added a little difficulty. Of course, it is only a little difficulty for Noah himself. In the midst of Tanjing's somewhat confused expression, Noah took out another 4 arrows from the quiver next to him, and together with the arrows that had been placed on the bow from the beginning, all 5 arrows were placed on the bow, and the tail end was directly pieced together. Pinching it with his fingers, he slowly pulled it together with the bowstring. Jian Tanjing seemed to realize what Noah was going to do and made a small exclamation. However, this small exclamation was also blocked out of Noah's ears. He set the bow, aimed at the front, and closed his eyes at an angle that even Jian Tanjing could not see. His perception force was like mental energy, spreading out in all directions like a net. It did not take long for Noah's sensory ability to feedback the position of the targets in the most direct way to Noah's mind. Moreover, it was not just one target, but 5 targets. Following the feedback of the information from his sensory ability, Noah calmly adjusted the position of the 5 arrows on the bow, and the adjustment was completed in a short moment. In the next moment, Noah suddenly opened his eyes, and the hand that was tightly holding the end of the arrows and the bowstring suddenly loosened. Whoosh 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 whoosh. With the rebounding bowstring as the propulsion force, the 5 arrows each cut through the air, and shot forward amidst the faint sharp sound of breaking through the air. Thump 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 thump. In an instant, the sound of the arrows hitting the targets rang out, echoing in the empty archery department apart from Noah and Jian Tanjing. Looking at the scene in front of her, Jian Tanjing seemed to be doubting her own eyes. She blinked cutely, and then couldn't help but open her mouth. If it wasn't for the girl's reservedness that made Jian Tanjing cover her mouth with her hand when she opened it, Jian Tanjing would have exclaimed out loud by now. It couldn't be helped. As a member of the archery department, the scene in front of her was a little too shocking. With Noah, who had released the bowstring, maintained the arrow, and raised his hand behind him, the 5 closest targets in front of him, which should have been empty, were all pierced with arrows. 5 arrows hit 5 targets. Moreover, all of them hit the bullseye. If the arrows were shot in 5 separate shots, and all 5 shots hit the bullseye, then Jian Tanjing wouldn't be so surprised. However, if the 5 arrows were shot by the same person with the same bow at the same time, then it was a different story. Jian Tanjing could only find one word to describe the scene in front of her. So amazing. Hearing Jian Tanjing's voice, Noah smiled slightly. I told you, I'm still a little confident in shooting, right? Although he had used a method that was close to cheating. Amazing. It's really amazing. Only then did Jian Tanjing react. She moved closer to Noah and said with surprise and excitement. This is the first time I've seen shooting like this. It's really amazing. Seeing Jian Tanjing's unprecedented enthusiasm, Noah was subconsciously forced to take a step back by this gentle girl's aura. No. It's just a little stubborn of a layman. Hearing that, Jian Tanjing shook her head vigorously. The shooting just now was perfect. Your posture was also very standard. Most importantly, your hand didn't even tremble when you used the bow for the first time. When you released the bowstring, you were very steady when you released the arrow. Also, your accuracy and technique are things that even our chief commander can't do. Rather than saying that even the chief commander of the archery department couldn't do it, it would be better to say that almost no ordinary person could do it. Jian Tanjing did have a special fondness for archery. She seemed to be very touched by Noah's cheat-like shooting, which made Noah a little regretful that he overdid it. At this moment, Noah suddenly felt a sharp gaze piercing his back, causing him to narrow his eyes and turn his head around. What he saw was the empty archery department's main entrance. However, Noah didn't think that his intuition was wrong. Someone was watching him. Chapter 735. In the end, Noah stayed in Suicunuan Academy for an entire day. To be more precise, he stayed in the archery department for an entire day. As Jian Tanjing still had to attend classes, she went to the classroom after the club's morning practice. Since outsiders were not allowed to walk around the campus, Noah originally planned to wait outside the school gate. However, Jian Tanjing struggled and hesitated for a long time before she mustered her courage and did something that violated the school rules. She hid Noah in the archery department. Perhaps it was luck, but the archery department's chief general seemed to have brought the members to replenish the club supplies, such as bowstrings, arrows, and the like. Therefore, no one else came to the archery department today except for Jian Tanjing, who was guarding the door. Therefore, Noah was able to stay in the archery department for an entire day. At least, that was what it looked like on the surface. After Jian Tanjing went to the classroom, Noah slipped out of the archery department and secretly strolled around Suikyunyuan Academy. In the morning, Noah did sense that someone was secretly observing him. Since the owner of that gaze was able to disappear as soon as Noah noticed it, it proved that the other party was definitely not to be trifled with. Noah, who felt more and more concerned, naturally couldn't stay in the archery department obediently and wait for Jian Tanjing to finish school. Unfortunately, after that, Noah didn't discover anything strange in Suikyunyuan Academy. During lunch break, Noah knew that Jian Tanjing would come to the archery department to look for him, so he snuck back into the archery department and spent the rest of the time with her. Apart from that, Noah was strolling around Suikyunyuan Academy in the dark, but he didn't discover anything. Of course, the more he didn't find anything, the more Noah was concerned. Otherwise, Noah wouldn't have worked so hard to hide in the dark corner of Suikyunyuan Academy and hide here and there in order to not be discovered by ordinary students. Just like that, by the time Noah returned to the archery department empty-handed, the sky was gradually turning dark and Suikyunyuan Academy was about to be dismissed. Due to Noah's presence in the archery department, Jian Tanjing rushed into the archery department as soon as class ended. When she realized that Noah was still there, she bowed apologetically. "I'm sorry for making you hide here for so long." "It's alright, I'm not someone who can't stay idle." Noah spoke nonsense with a straight face, as if he had been obediently staying there the whole time. He then changed the topic. "It's getting late and I've seen enough of the tour. I should go back." "Yes." Jian Tanjing was a little disappointed, but also a little relieved and said embarrassedly. "Actually, the members of the archery department will continue to participate in the club activities in a while. Tanjing, Jian Tanjing, Jian Tanjing, Tanjing, Jian Tanjing. Then, it's better for all unrelated people to leave here." Just as Noah was about to leave the archery department, he inadvertently caught a glimpse of something strange that stunned him. Jian Tanjing noticed that Noah was suddenly staring at her without moving, which made her a little shy. What's wrong?" Hearing this, Noah frowned and reached out his hand. As Jian Tanjing blushed slightly, he stroked Jian Tanjing's head. Then, Noah picked out a tuft of hair from Jian Tanjing's beautiful black hair. Noah was not to be blamed for acting this way. It was because the tuft of hair that Noah picked out from Jian Tanjing's beautiful black hair had turned purple. Yes. It wasn't originally purple, but it had turned purple. Noah was quite confident in his memory. Therefore, Noah could say with certainty that Jian Tanjing's hair was originally the most beautiful kind of black. There wasn't a trace of impurities in it like it was now. That wasn't the most important thing. The most important thing was that Noah realized that there were traces of magic power in this tuft of hair. It was obvious that it was due to the influence of some unknown magic that caused the color of her hair to become like this. Moreover, he wasn't sure if it was just Noah's imagination. He felt that the traces of magic power couldn't be more familiar. It was the aura of Noah's magic power. Jian Tanjing was still a little confused at first, but when Noah picked out the tuft of purple hair, she immediately took a step back in a hurry, smoothed her hair, and hid the tuft of purple hair in her black hair. Her face no longer had the gentleness when she faced Noah all day, but became the same as when they first met. Her pretty face was full of sadness and depression, and her eyes were evasive. The atmosphere suddenly became stiff. Noah and Jian Tanjing fell into silence at the same time and stopped talking. Noah had been looking at Jian Tanjing all the time, as if he intended to see through Jian Tanjing's heart. His dark eyes were deeper than ever. Jian Tanjing, however, seemed to be afraid of Noah's gaze, or it should be said that she was afraid of being seen through by Noah. She kept her head down, avoiding Noah's gaze, and didn't dare to let her eyes meet with Noah's. After a long time, Noah suddenly smiled as if nothing had happened. "I didn't expect Xiaoying to know how to dye your hair. I always thought that you were an obedient girl." No. Xiaoying stuttered. She looked like she wanted to explain, but couldn't. Noah couldn't help but smile. "Well, I do hope that you can have more fun." It's not good to be an obedient girl all the time. Noah shrugged and changed the topic. Then, your club members should be here by now. I'd better leave quickly. Yes. Realizing that Noah didn't intend to probe further, nor did he make things difficult for her, and instead gave her a way out, Jian Tanjing felt grateful and guilty. She could only keep her head down. I'll send you off, no need. Noah patted Jian Tanjing's head and said meaningfully. Instead of worrying about me, I'm actually more worried about you. With that, Noah turned around, waved his hand, and walked out of the archery department without looking back. Then, see you next time. Jian Tanjing finally raised her head and looked at Noah's back that was gradually disappearing under the setting sun. Her eyes kept fluctuating, and she couldn't regain her senses for a long time. After leaving the archery department, the expression on Noah's face completely disappeared. Noah raised his head and looked at the dazzling sunset on the horizon. Then, he abruptly spoke. He suddenly asked, Ryder, are you there? Yes. Ryder didn't deactivate her spiritual form, nor did she use the contract to talk to Noah directly in his heart. Instead, she spoke to Noah from behind, telling him that she was always behind him. Noah didn't waste any time and went straight to the point. Ryder, from now on, you will secretly follow Jian Tanjing. Once you notice anything unusual, tell me immediately. Also, if she encounters any danger, remember to protect her. This was the first time Noah had used a commanding tone to give instructions to his servant. Perhaps she could sense that Noah was serious about this matter from his tone, but Ryder didn't make any objections. Just like before, she obediently chose to obey. I understand. Under normal circumstances, as long as it was a servant, she would more or less raise some objections. After all, instead of protecting an ordinary person, the safety of her master, who she relied on, should be more important. However, Ryder didn't raise any objections from the beginning to the end. Just like before, Ryder had an attitude of absolute obedience to her master's orders. She didn't even have the slightest intention of refuting. Of course, this was also because Ryder already knew that Noah's combat strength wasn't inferior to that of a servant. Otherwise, even if she didn't raise any objections, she would still raise some questions. If there's anything, Master can summon me to your side with the command incantation. With that, Ryder's aura gradually faded away from Noah. Presumably, Ryder had gone to Jian Tanjing's side, right? Silently feeling Ryder's aura gradually leaving him, Noah still raised his head to look at the setting sun in the sky and sighed. She really can't stop worrying. Chapter 736. Originally, Noah planned to wait for Rin to come out before leaving Suechu and Gakuin together. After all, it was Rin Enben who brought Noah to this school. If he left by himself, he would probably be nagged to death by Rin Enben. However, Noah really didn't know if he should mention this to Rin Enben, considering the strange things that had happened to Mamoru Sakura. If he didn't mention it, the cooperation between the two seemed to be a bit bad. Mentioning Rin Enosaka's complicated feelings for Machan Tanakura would only cause the girl who was usually calm and collected, but who would act impulsively at critical moments, to be driven into a dead end, right? Under such circumstances, Noah simply left. When students began to leave Suechu and Gakuin, he slipped out of the school gate one step ahead. While thinking about his own things, he moved in the direction of his apartment. The sky gradually darkened. However, the more Noah walked, the farther away from his apartment, as if he deliberately planned to stay away from his apartment. He strolled on the streets of Fuyuki City. It wasn't until the sky was completely dark that Noah came to a park and stopped. It's time to come out, right? In the empty park, Noah sighed loudly. Such a clumsy tracking technique, if he doesn't come out, it will be too embarrassing. After Noah left Suechu and Gakuin, there was a person who has been following Noah from the school gate until now. Noah said that the other party's tracking technique was clumsy. It wasn't a deliberate provocation, but a fact. There was no need for the assistance of perception ability at all, and there was no need to detect the other party's aura. After Noah left Suechu and Gakuin, the other party's footsteps had been echoing in Noah's ears. It seemed that the other party had deliberately suppressed his footsteps, but it was quite clumsy, there was no trace of skill at all. It was like a clown. If it weren't for the aura he sensed from the other party, Noah wouldn't have played with that clumsy clown until now. Turning around, Noah looked at the entrance of the park. Behind a street lamp outside, a figure was clearly visible, and he didn't even hide completely. Now, without Noah's explanation, everyone knew how clumsy the other party's tracking technique was. TCH, in an obvious sound of speechlessness, the figure hidden behind the street lamp slowly walked out, with an angry expression, entered Noah's field of vision. Seeing the full appearance of the person, Noah didn't seem to be surprised at all, and he curled his mouth and smiled. Is it really you? The clumsy tracker was Shinji. Noah realized that the guy in front of him was constantly lowering other people's evaluation of him. Clown's words and deeds. Clown's personality. Clown's posture. Clown's skills. It was really the first time Noah had met such a person that he couldn't overestimate. It wasn't that Noah really intended to look at Shinji. But this person seemed to deliberately not let others see his side that was worth mentioning. It was more like he deliberately wanted to be looked down by others. Every performance made people's impression of him lower. That was not the most important thing. The most important thing was that this person had no self-awareness at all. This was the real performance of a clown. Very good. Shinji said such a sentence with a fake smile. I thought you wouldn't find me if you didn't have a servant by your side. See? This person had no self-awareness at all. Not only was his performance clumsy, but he also wanted to drag others to the same level as him. Shinji was such a person, wasn't he? In the face of such a person, Noah found that he couldn't even have a trace of disgust. Because the person opposite him would only bring others helplessness and helplessness. Did you just mention the servant? Noah didn't have the leisure to dawdle with such a guy. He narrowed his eyes. Knowing the existence of the servant means that you know about the Holy Grail War. So, should I just treat you as if you simply heard it from your own family? Or should I treat you as a related person? Do you still need to say that? Shinji snickered. I'm the heir of the Ta family. As the heir of one of the three families in the Holy Grail War, how can I not be a master? Oh. Noah said lightly. But isn't the magic circuit of your generation exhausted? Did Enosaka also say that you can't be a magician? Hearing this, Shinji seemed to be kicked by Noah's words. His mouth twitched, and the fake smile on his face became more and more ugly. As long as you have the qualifications to be a magician, it is possible to be chosen by the Holy Grail and become a master. Don't tell me you don't even know this? Of course, Noah didn't even know this. And it was precisely because of this that Noah felt that it was necessary to come to Suichu and Gakuen to see Shinji. Rin and Osaka also kept saying that it was impossible, but he couldn't completely deny it. It's just that the better the magician, the more likely it was to be chosen by the Holy Grail. Noah felt that as one of the three families, the Ta family should have a master. Before, he had been suspicious of Shinji. After discovering the abnormality of Shinji's hair color, Noah felt that there was something more to Shinji. As a result, the master of the Ta family was actually Shinji. Well, no matter what, I am the true heir of the Ta family. Shinji seemed to be deliberately emphasizing, letting out a proud smile at Noah. And you, as a master, actually let your servant leave. If I don't come to you now, when would be a good time to come to you? While saying this, Shinji took out a thick book from his arms. Seeing that book, Noah's eyes flashed. The reason for that was because there was a very unusual demonic power in that book. This is a rare opportunity, I will specially introduce you to my servant. Shinji held the book in one hand and said proudly. Come out. Saber. The voice, just as he finished. Clang, the sound of a heavy metal piece hitting the ground faintly sounded. That was the sound of steel-cast boots hitting the ground. Then, a figure appeared from the dark shadow behind Shinji, entering Noah's vision. Title, Sabermaster. real name. Attribute, order to good ability value, strength, A durability, B agility, A magic power, A luck, B noble phantasm, A++ title skill, magic power, A with the highest level of magic power that can nullify the magic circle and great magic. Even the most powerful magician in the current era can't directly use magic to hurt Saber herself. Because the command spell is the crystallization of magic, in front of the highest level of magic power, if the master only used a command spell, Saber could even resist the command, but because she has the dragon attribute, when facing the magic of killing the dragon, her magic power may not be fully used. Riding, Ace a soldier who used to fight on horseback, after becoming a servant, she can have the ability to ride. She can skillfully control a variety of mounts, including ancient warhorses, chariots, and modern land transportation, etc. But if she can't control magical beasts and phantom beasts, if she is given a suitable mount, the development of the battle will be different. Preservation skills, intuition, in a moment of battle, the ability to determine the most suitable action for oneself. Level A has entered the field of prediction of the future. She can predict the trajectory of bullets through the sound of the wind and intuition, avoid the attack of firearms, and to a certain extent, be immune to visual and auditory obstacles. Magic power release, A through the use of magic, she could strengthen her weapon and body. Level A, which allowed the originally weak and powerless female knight to have the strength to easily suppress many strong men. The armor she wore during battle was also weaved by releasing magic from this skill. Leadership, be the ability to govern a country, relying on this ability, can make the morale of the army she leads high. Level B, can manage a kingdom, but can't establish a world-class empire. Chapter 737. Clang. 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 Clang, powerful footsteps, accompanied by the sound of heavy boots landing on the ground, slowly reverberated in the pitch-black space. When the servant Saber came out from the shadow behind Shinji Tsushita, the first thing that caught Noah's eyes was the golden hair that was swaying in the moonlight. It seemed to be for the convenience of battle, the golden hair was specially tied behind the head. With such a conspicuous hair color in the moonlight, the girl who looked to be only 16 or 17 years old appeared in front of Noah's eyes. On her body, a blue dress showed the other person's slender body, but she also wore a silver breastplate in front of her body, and there were steel gauntlets on her hands, firmly covering her slender hands together with her fingers. Her feet were the same, with a pair of heavy boots. Such a girl had a majestic aura, as if the surrounding darkness was expelled. Step by step, she walked behind Shinji Tsushita and raised her head, exposing a doll-like delicate face under the scarce light. A pair of gem-like green eyes with an extremely strong determination made people can't help but have a feeling of heroic radiance. Undoubtedly, she was only a 16 or 17-year-old slender girl, but she had a heroic radiance and a fierce aura, which almost made Noah show a surprised expression. Just from the aura and posture, the other party was worthy of the title of hero. However, if one were to judge him based on his appearance, no one would associate him with the word hero. Not to mention, Shinji Tsushita just clearly said that the girl in front of him was a servant Saber. So, how could Noah not be surprised? It must be known that the servant Saber had the highest requirement for ability value. Generally, only the highest level of heroic spirits could become a servant Saber, which could be said to be the highest combat power in the Holy Grail War. As a result, such a servant Saber was occupied by a girl who looked very weak. How could Noah not be surprised? Of course, he was only surprised by Saber's appearance. As for Saber's ability points, it clearly told Noah that Saber was worthy of her rank. That was an ability value that was almost the same as that of Hercules Berserker. They were completely on par with each other. As for the precious artifact column, it was an A++ grade that made people's hearts shrink. If they underestimated the other party because of their appearance, they would definitely die a horrible death. Therefore, while Noah became serious, he couldn't help but feel puzzled. How could this be? Why was Saber's ability value so high? As the class with the highest combat power in the Holy Grail War, Noah did not doubt Saber's ability value. However, the servant's ability value was generally dependent on the master's magic power. Saber's master is Shinji Mitsuki, right? Would that guy, who even ran out of magic circuits, have the ability to make Saber's ability points reach such a level? Also, what's with the book in Shinji Mitsuki's hand? Questions after questions made Noah frown deeply. Shinji Mitsuki, who clearly saw Noah's reaction, thought that Noah was afraid, and couldn't help but let out a cunning laugh. How is it? Amazing, right? My servant is the strongest saber, okay? You magicians who look down on me should be scared now, right? Ha 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 ha. Shinji Mitsuki laughed proudly as if he had succeeded. Not only did it make Noah frown deeper, it also made Saber's eyes move, but her face was expressionless. The next second, Saber spoke in a clear voice. Master, please give me your orders. That voice was completely mechanical, without the slightest bit of emotion. No, it was not that there was no emotion. At least, Noah saw a hint of dissatisfaction in Saber's seemingly emotionless eyes. Dissatisfaction? Was she dissatisfied with her master? Well, it should be said that as a legendary hero, as a heroic spirit, becoming the servant of a person like Shinji Mitsuki would not cause dissatisfaction. Perhaps, only a servant-like rider, who was willing to listen to orders, would be dissatisfied. This also made Shinji Mitsuki's laughter abruptly stop, and he glared at Saber. Don't talk to me in such a commanding tone. Have you forgotten who your master is? How could he scold his own servant and the legendary hero so rudely? This Shinji Mitsuki really did not have anything that was pleasing to the eye. Facing such a Shinji Mitsuki, Saber was still expressionless. Her eyes fell on Noah, and she didn't even look at Shinji Mitsuki. She said so lightly. No, I have never forgotten who my real master is. So, master, please give me your orders, for victory. These words made Noah frown again. What Saber meant was that she shouldn't have spoken to her master in such a commanding tone, right? But Saber still maintained such a tone to Shinji Mitsuki. What did this mean? You? Shinji Mitsuki seemed to feel that his face was blocked by Saber, or perhaps he understood what Saber meant, and he suddenly became angry. You're just a servant, how dare you disobey my orders? Shinji Mitsuki's words just attracted Saber's sharp eyes. Even if you are my master now, I am still a heroic spirit that exists as a hero. In the past, I used to rule over thousands of people as a king. If you insult me as a king, even if you have the book of false officials, I will personally punish you. Shinji Mitsuki suddenly let out a disappointing scream, and stepped back, away from Saber. Seeing Shinji Mitsuki's behavior, this time, Saber clearly frowned, and then as if she no longer cared about Shinji Mitsuki, she raised her head and looked at Noah again. As a master, it's only right for a servant to stay by your side and protect you. Since you made the mistake of moving your servant away from you, you shouldn't have any complaints now that someone has taken advantage of you, right? Every word, every action, the servant named Saber was like a majestic knight. Undoubtedly, it should not match with the slender appearance, but it gave people a feeling that it was natural. Compared to Shinji Mitsuki, who was a master, it only made people feel that such a master was not worthy of such a servant. So, Noah smiled and said such a sentence. Since letting the servant accompany you to protect you is the way of action that every master knows, then, do you think that I deliberately transferred the servant away from me is really a mistake? Hearing this, Saber's eyes slightly narrowed. Ha! Ha! Shinji Mitsuki, who was just scared by Saber, seemed to want to get back his sense of superiority from Noah, and let out a mocking laugh. Do you think it's useful for you to say these words now? Noah just raised his eyes and looked at Saber's eyes. Whether or not I'm trying to be brave, you'll know after you try, Saber's servant. Immediately, Saber closed her eyes slightly before opening them abruptly. She clenched her fist and lifted it up, causing a sharp and oppressive gale to appear. It stirred up the sound of air being sliced apart as it pointed at Noah. Then let me try. The moment the words fell, Saber's body bent down. Dong! Saber, who turned into a bullet, violently shot in the direction of Noah's direction, her hands in the air, as if she was holding a weapon, and fiercely swung at Noah's head. Noah, who felt that something was wrong, took a step back. Clang! The next moment, a sword light flashed. Chapter 738. Clang! When the gorgeous sword light flashed through the space, the entire place where the sword light passed by seemed to be cut by something. Everything became chaotic. Rip! Noah, who had taken a step back in time, happened to be in the range where the sword light flashed. However, the clothes in front of him were ruthlessly slashed through. With a clear tearing sound, a tear appeared on his clothes. Noah's heart skipped a beat, and he quickly moved his toes on the ground. After putting some distance between them, he glanced at his clothes, which had been torn apart. He then looked at Saber, who was in front of him, and his eyes flickered. Over there, Saber was still in a slashing posture with a weapon in her hand. She adjusted her posture and raised her hand. "Did you dodge? You seem to be an excellent warrior." Upon hearing Saber's unabashed praise, Noah did not respond. Instead, he glanced at Saber's hand, and a look of astonishment flashed in his eyes. With his sensory ability, Noah could clearly feel that there was a sword in front of him. At that moment, there was a sword in Saber's hand. However, without his sensory ability, Noah could not even see the shape of the sword. He could only vaguely feel that there was a chaotic wind blowing on it, completely covering Saber's sword. An invisible sword? Don't say that I'm despicable. Saber pursed her lips and smiled, but her eyes were shining brightly. As a battle tactic, this is very effective. After saying that, Saber tightened her grip on the hilt of the invisible sword. With a loud stomp, she charged forward. The sword in her hand cut through the air like a silver sword light. It carried a strong wind that caused the air to fluctuate as it slashed down at Noah. The sharpness of the invisible sword sliced through the air beneath it. The sharp sound of the sword was like a scream in the air. It was extremely terrifying. Although Noah was a little surprised by the invisible sword, it was not to the extent that he could not react. Even if it was invisible to the naked eye, Noah could clearly sense its existence and even the trajectory of its slash. Whang! Thus, with a vibration, traces of magic emerged from Noah's limbs. Like a catalyst, lines of magic spread out along Noah's limbs. The strengthening from the enhanced magic made Noah's four limbs more powerful than before, making Noah calm down. He felt the sword that was slicing towards him, and when it was only half a meter away from his head, he gently moved a step to his left. Clang! The sword that could not be seen by the naked eye suddenly slashed down. Amidst a clear sword hum, it brushed past Noah's shoulder in a thrilling manner. The moment the sharp sword missed, Noah's left hand suddenly moved slightly. Then, he slapped to the side. Paw! The seemingly casual slap of the hand actually caused a sound of impact at the moment when the invisible sword was about to land. It was the sound of Noah's hand slamming heavily on the blade of the invisible sword. Suddenly, a powerful force burst out, causing the invisible sword and saber to tilt to the side. For a moment, Saber's awe-inspiring momentum seemed to have stagnated because of Noah's slap. She was surprised. Had his sword been seen through? No. Compared to the problem of her sword being seen through, Saber was more surprised that Noah, as an ordinary person, could actually keep up with her attack. Whang! While Saber was still in shock, Noah pulled one of his hands behind his back and clenched it tightly, causing the air around his fist to vibrate. A beautiful airflow gathered into the shape of a whirlpool and covered his entire fist. Like an extremely heavy hammer, Noah's arm immediately shook, and the heavy fist, with a terrifying oppressive wind, smashed toward Saber's chest. This time, Saber reacted instantly. Traces of magic quickly gathered in one of her hands, covering the entire steel gauntlet and holding it to her side. The heavy fist suddenly landed on the steel gauntlet, colliding with the hard steel. Clang! The fist and the gauntlet collided fiercely, causing a crisp sound of steel clashing to be heard at the point of contact, causing waves of shockwaves to appear in the surroundings. The two people who collided shook at the same time, as if they were rebounded by the shock waves. With a muffled sound, they were both pushed back, creating a distance between them. After stabilizing her body, Saber raised her head and looked at Noah, who was also pushed back by the shock waves. Her expression changed slightly. This person could actually collide head-on with a servant? No. Impossible. Not far away, Tong Shinji was shocked by Noah's strength, which was not in the same dimension as him. After he reacted, as if he couldn't accept it, he shouted at Saber like a madman. "Hey! What are you doing? Hurry up and defeat him." Saber took a deep breath of the cool air. She stared at the calm Noah and directly ignored the unreasonable Shinji Mitsuda as she spoke in a deep voice. "Your Excellency has such skills, which is admirable. I take back what I said just now. Letting the servant leave your side is not because of your lack of strategy, but because you do have the ability to deal with all situations without relying on the servant." With such a sentence, Saber once again raised the completely invisible sword and pointed it at Noah. "In that case, I will also use all my skills. This is the greatest respect I can give you as a knight who can't announce my name in the duel." Hearing this, Noah just leaned his body and clenched his fist. "Although it is not my intention to fight here, after all, the recent battles have been too frequent. But since the servant said so, if I don't take it seriously, it would be rude of me. Come at me. Then." Saber clenched the hilt of her sword and looked at Noah with narrowed eyes. "I won't hold back." After a moment, Saber's body suddenly leaned forward a little, her feet suddenly stomped on the ground, her whole body spun, and slashed forward. Whoosh! Suddenly, as Saber swung her sword, the invisible sword in her hand suddenly burst into a whirlwind, bringing with it a whistling wind and a sense of oppression. It was like a burst of shock wave that suddenly spread out, passing through the obstacles of space and violently swept toward Noah. The sudden attack made Noah's eyes flash with a touch of surprise, but his face did not show much alarm. His hands suddenly clenched into fists again, and he did not retreat but instead moved forward. Noah landed heavily on the ground with a muffled thud. His tightly clenched fist was covered by a faint golden vortex as he violently threw a punch at the wave of wind that was rushing towards him. Noah's annihilation strike originally used the shock wave caused by the vibration of his arm, and then covered the shock wave on his fist, and then punched out. Boom! So, at the same time when Noah punched out, a burst of shock wave shook like a cannonball, and fiercely collided with the shock wave. Bang! The two shock waves collided with each other, causing a ripple in the air. It was like a violent gale, carrying an astonishing impact force that spread out in all directions. It shook the ground, causing some gravel and cracks to appear. At that moment, Noah's whole body was shaken by the fierce aftermath of the collision of the two shock waves, and he was forced to take a few steps back. The tip of his foot touched the ground, and after distancing himself from the center of the shock wave for some distance, he stabilized his body and stopped. Whoosh! At that moment, a slight sound of something breaking through the air was heard, causing Noah's expression to change, and he suddenly raised his head. There, a blurred shadow was eerily like a ghost, flashing above Noah's head. With her nimble body, Saber took advantage of the moment when Noah had just stabilized his body, and flashed forward, waving the sword in her hand. Chapter 739. Clang! The crisp sound of a sword suddenly rang out in the air, drawing a long sword light. It was like a silver moon cutting through the sky, instantly illuminating the surrounding pitch-black space. With the invisible sword in her hand, Saber directly caught the moonlight and slashed at Noah. The dazzling sword light even made Noah's eyes suddenly shrink, and he subconsciously squinted. Of course, the effect on his vision was not enough to make Noah unable to react. After all, Noah still had superb sensing ability. At that moment, Noah simply closed his eyes, and his palms suddenly clenched into a fist. A pale golden vortex of air swirled around his fist, and as it contracted, the luster of the silver moon-like sword light actually paled in comparison. 1 gold. 1 silver. The two flashes of light dispelled the darkness in the entire park, and shone in the space. Just as the golden fist and the silver sword light were about to collide, Saber, who was mercilessly slashing at Noah, suddenly changed her expression and abruptly stopped swinging her sword. Her whole body was suspended in the air, and she once again fell to the ground. Seeing this, Noah's eyes narrowed, and almost subconsciously stopped his attack. He abruptly stopped the annihilation strike that was about to be swung out, and the fist covered with the bright vortex of air suddenly stopped in front of Saber's delicate face. The wind that it carried caused Saber's dazzling golden hair to dance in the wind. Just like this, Noah and Saber simultaneously stopped their attacks at the last moment. Noah's fist was right in front of Saber's face. Saber's invisible sword was almost on Noah's shoulder. It was a close call. Noah, who did not expect Saber to suddenly stop, frowned deeply. "You. What are you doing?" Tong Shinji, who was hiding at the side, actually scolded. "Hurry up and take care of him." However, Saber did not even care about Tong Shinji's reaction, and she did not care about Noah in front of her. Instead, she forcefully turned her head and looked in one direction. At that moment, a dazzling brilliance enveloped Saber's slender body, causing the outline of her body to fluctuate. Starlight particles appeared around her, and as if they were contracting, they gathered on Saber's body. Saber was a little surprised, but soon seemed to have understood something, and revealed a stern expression. In the next moment, Saber disappeared from the spot. Yes. Along with the dazzling brilliance, she disappeared from the spot. Noah was stunned on the spot, but the next moment, he immediately reacted and exclaimed. "Teleportation? Teleportation of the command spell?" Although Noah had never used the command spell before, nor had he seen anyone else use it, he could feel the spatial fluctuations before Saber disappeared. There was no doubt that it was teleportation-based teleportation. And looking at Saber's performance just now, it was obviously not her own doing. Then, other than the teleportation of the servant using the command spell, Noah could not think of any other factor that could make Saber, who had the highest level of magical power, uncontrollably teleport away. However, wasn't Saber's master Tong Shinji? If someone used the command spell on Saber and summoned Saber to his side, that person should be Tong Shinji, right? And Tong Shinji was here, right? Coupled with Saber's asymmetrical ability value and her attitude towards Tong Shinji, Noah could understand it no matter how stupid he was. There was something wrong with this matter. Damn it. On the other side, Tong Shinji seemed to understand what was going on before Noah, and he shouted angrily. "That woman. She said she was not interested in the Holy Grail War? She said she did not want to be master at all? In the end, didn't she summon the servant back? Damn it. Damn it. Damn it." While venting his anger as if no one was around, Tong Shen raised the book in his hand. "Come back here. You useless servant. I'm your master." Amidst Tong Shinji's angry roar, the thick book in his hand began to flicker with the light of magic. However, at this moment, a beam of light made of magic power cut through the space, rubbing against the air, and like a laser, it fell on the hand of Shinji Mitsuki, who was holding the heavy book. Suddenly, Tong Shinner didn't even have time to react. His hand that was holding the thick book, along with the book, was vaporized by the magic light beam. Ah! Tragic cries of pain resounded throughout the night sky of the park. "It hurts. So painful. It's so painful." Tong Shinner held his shoulder that was charred and fortunately stopped bleeding, but his entire arm had disappeared. Tong Shinner rolled to the ground. The intense pain caused this fellow, who was constantly dragging down the evaluation of others, to roll on the ground. As he rolled, he cried desperately. His face, mucus and tears were all gushing out. Even saliva was flowing out from the corner of his mouth. That cry, that performance, he didn't have any backbone that a man should have. It was extremely disgusting. My hand. My hand. Shedding tears, drooling, and sniffling, Tong Shinji kept rolling back and forth on the ground. Because of the severe pain, his face was twisted into a disgusting look. His crying was even worse than if his parents had died. Looking at all this indifferently, Noah expressionlessly came in front of Tong Shinner, who was rolling on the ground. Looking down at this clown, he felt that it was unforgivable to waste time with him, so he directly spoke. "The book just now, the book that Saber called, the Book of False Officials, you seem to want to use that book to control Saber, right?" Noah's voice was directly ignored by Tong Shinner, or it should be said that it couldn't enter Tong Shinner's ears. It was covered by Tong Shinner's tragic cries. Tong Shinner didn't hear a single word. Tong Shinner was still rolling on the ground and crying. Noah, who was disgusted by Tong Shinner's appearance, really felt a violent emotion in his heart. He suddenly raised his foot and heavily kicked Tong Shinner's stomach. Bang! A muffled sound rang out, telling everyone how much strength Noah had used in this kick. Goo! Tong Shinner, who was crying, spat out a bitter cry. His whole body was kicked away and smashed on the lever of the nearby park. Blood finally flowed down from Tong Shinner's head. Ah 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 ah. Tong Shinner's hand that was covering his burnt arm turned to cover his stomach and screamed again. "My patience is limited, and you've almost worn it out." Noah walked step by step towards Tong Shinner's direction. His voice became violent. "You like to scream? You don't like to answer my questions? Good. Then let me help you. The other hand and 2 feet. I'll help you cut them off. I'll let you scream as much as you want." "No. No." Tong Shinner's face was covered with snot and tears, trying to get away from Noah. "It's none of my business. It's none of my business. It's that woman who said she didn't want to be the master. She wanted to transfer the command incantation to the Book of False Officials. She wanted to give me the right to use Saber. It's none of my business. Transfer the command incantation to the Book of False Officials? She wanted to give you the right to use Saber?" Noah frowned and looked at Tong Shinner coldly. "In other words, you're not the master of Saber, right?" "No. No." Tong Shinner's previous complacent and clown-like flaunting his superiority completely disappeared. Instead, it was replaced by an unbearable crying appearance with snot and tears all over his face. "It's none of my business. Don't kill me. Who's the master of Saber?" Noah had a bad feeling. "Who summoned Saber?" "It's Sakura." Tong Shinner's cry resounded around. "It's Sakura." Chapter 740. The gorgeous pale golden airflow converged into the shape of a vortex, covering the bottom of the feet, dazzling like a meteor. At first glance, it seemed that a meteor suddenly exploded, turning into a fierce impact, erupting under the feet of its owner, making the dark figure turn into a light, sweeping through the air. With the skill of leap, Noah, who directly stepped on the air and rushed forward, regardless of the wind and dust hitting his body, carrying the screaming Shinji in his hand, rushed forward, and his face was ugly to the extreme. At this time, what surged in Noah's heart was a sense of violence that could almost be described as violent. However, it was no longer directed at Shinji, a dispensable small character, but against the entire Tong family. And the magician called Zhang Yan of Tong. It didn't take much effort at all. Driven by fear, Shinji told Noah everything, including the origin of Tong Ying. It was not until this moment that Noah understood why Tong Ying would always be inferior when facing others, and was so self-abased and negative. That was entirely because Tong Ying had lived a life that could be said to be inhuman over the years. Because the magician qualifications of the Tong family were almost completely exhausted, Tong Ying was adopted by the Tong family when she was a child as an adopted daughter from outside. However, what greeted Tong Ying was not the fate of being a magician who was entrusted with hope, but the treatment that could be described as despair. It was only because the attribute of Tong Ying was not in line with the magic system of the Tong family. Therefore, the real master of the Tong family, called Zhang Yan of Tong family, attempted to bury the inferior servant called engraving insect into Tong Ying's body, and transform Tong Ying alive. Fortunately, there seemed to be some kind of mysterious power in Tong Ying's body that had been protecting the girl, so that the girl would not really fall into an inhuman hell. However, when he thought of the girl who felt inferior and often unconsciously showed a sad and depressed expression, living in such an environment for more than 10 years, and having to face the various means used by Zhang Yan of Tong to consume the mysterious power to protect herself every day, Tong Ying's fear and despair seemed to be able to be transmitted to Noah's heart, making Noah's heart violent. When they first met, Noah was inexplicably very concerned about Tong Ying. Noah didn't know whether it was because Tong Ying was also a person with a story or some other factors, but it was undeniable that Noah did care about the girl. Now, Noah finally knew the past that Tong Ying had been hiding, and his heart was anxious. That's right. He was anxious. According to Shinji of Tong, recently, Tong Ying's situation was worse than the treatment she had received in the past 10 years. That was because Tong Ying became a master and summoned Saber's servant. Originally, becoming a master was a condition that Zhang Yan of Tong Ying put forward to Tong Ying. With obtaining the Holy Grail as a condition, once Tong Ying won the Holy Grail War, Zhang Yan of Tong Ying would give up Tong Ying and let her live an ordinary life. However, after summoning Saber, Zhang Yan of Tong Ying went back on his word. After summoning Saber, for some reason, she suddenly lost the mysterious power that had been protecting her all this time. No. It shouldn't be said that she lost it. Instead, the power that had been protecting Tong Ying seemed to have replaced Tong Ying, who had very little magic power in her body, and became the source of Saber's magic power. That was why Saber's ability value was still so high after becoming the servant of Tong Ying and Shinji of Tong Ying, who didn't have much magic power in their bodies. Although he didn't know the reason, whether Saber used Tong Ying as a master or Shinji of Tong Ying as a master, it had always been the mysterious power in Tong Ying's body that provided Saber with magic power. This was obviously abnormal. However, no one cared about this abnormal situation. Including Noah, he didn't have the leisure to think about this matter now. At this moment, Noah was only thinking about one thing. That was, he had to get to Tong Ying's side. Without the protection of that mysterious power, it was easy to imagine how Zhang Yan of Tong Ying would treat Tong Ying. If it wasn't for the fact that after Tong Ying summoned Saber, even if she lost the protection of the mysterious power, Saber had replaced the mysterious power and had been protecting Tong Ying for the past few days, making Zhang Yan of Tong Ying unable to act rashly. Noah couldn't imagine what would have happened to Tong Ying. Therefore, at this time, Noah unconsciously wanted to scold Tong Ying. Undoubtedly, she knew that she no longer had the mysterious power to protect her. Instead, Saber had been protecting her. Tong Ying actually transferred Saber's control to Shinji of Tong Ying and let Shinji of Tong Ying take Saber away from her side. It was simply stupid. And now, since Saber had been summoned back by the command spell, what did that prove? It proved that Tong Ying was very likely to be in danger. In addition, from the beginning, Ryder had not responded to Noah's call, as if it was entangled by something, which made Noah even more anxious. At this moment, Noah used all his strength to leap forward. His figure was like a meteor, shooting through the air, flying in the direction of the Tong family's house that Shinji of Tong Ying had pointed out. Not long after, Noah finally saw the building of the Tong family. However, before Noah could cheer up, a wave of magic power surged from the inside of the Tong family's house. Dong! The next moment, the building of the Tong family exploded under the impact of the magic power, turning into a pile of rubble and shattering. Immediately after, two figures shot out from the rubble that had exploded. Like two thunderbolts, they spun around and suddenly collided with each other. Dong! The violent impact and the strong flash suddenly soared, illuminating the night sky above the Tong family's house extremely dazzling. Noah suddenly stopped, raised his empty hand, and blocked the impact of the attack. In Noah's hand, Tong Shinji, who had been screaming, snot, and tears flowing down his face, struggled fiercely after discovering the strong impact, as if he had been completely traumatized. Ah! I don't want to go. I don't want to go. In Noah's hand, Tong Shinji, whose face was full of snot and tears, let out a scream that was drowned by the impact. However, Noah, who was close at hand, could still hear Tong Shinji scream, and could even feel that Tong Shinji was desperately struggling, which made Noah's figure almost fall from the air. Trash. Noah, who had used leap to step in the void and used the impact to stabilize his body, clicked his tongue. Do you want me to let you go? Then I'll fulfill your wish. Tong Shinji was stunned at first, and then there was an ominous premonition in his heart, which made him take a look at his lower body. The dark moonlit night was like a giant beast, opening its bloody mouth to the high and mighty Shinji Tsushima. In Fuyuki City, the buildings were at least 100 meters above Noah and Tong Shinji. If Noah let go of Tong Shinji at this time, when he thought of this, the ominous premonition in Tong Shinji's heart became more intense, and even his body trembled, shouting at Noah. You, what do you want to do? Nothing. Noah sneered. Just let you fend for yourself later. After that, Noah no longer held Tong Shinji, and directly let go of his hand, letting Tong Shinji scream hysterically, fall from the sky, and soon disappeared in the dark moonlight. Only then did Noah turn around and charge forward. Under the detection of his excellent sensing ability, Noah had already recognized the two people who frequently collided with each other. One was Saber, who was summoned back. The other was Ryder, who Noah had been calling since the beginning. Why are these two servants fighting? Chapter 741. Saber and Ryder were enveloped in thick magic flames as if they had turned into a real thunderbolt. They flashed through the air, and at the same time, they violently collided with each other. Dong! Just like the collision of meteorites, a deafening roar rang out. Waves of shockwaves also followed the ripples of energy that were set off. The shockwaves spread in all directions, causing the atmosphere to be in chaos. Even the temperature seemed to have risen a little. The two servants, both of whom had top-notch abilities, seemed to be competing with each other. The magical power in their bodies was getting stronger and stronger, causing the impact when they collided with each other to become more and more turbulent. Dong 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 dong. The two servants, who had turned into thunderbolts, flashed through the air like two meteors chasing each other. They circled back and forth and collided with each other, causing waves of impact and muffled sounds in the air. After a while, they plunged down at the same time. Bang! With a loud crash, two craters with a diameter of about 2 meters were smashed open on the ground. Thick smoke and dust rose, but it was quickly dispersed by the magical flame rising from Saber and Ryder. Then, Saber, who was holding an invisible sword, and Ryder, who was holding a short sword that looked like a spike that was connected to a chain, were exposed under the moonlight from the two craters that looked like craters. Upon closer look, Saber was holding a girl in her arms. It was none other than Jian Tanjing. However, at this moment, Jian Tanjing seemed to have fainted. Her eyes were closed, and her body fell limp in Saber's arms. It was obvious that she had lost consciousness. Holding Jian Tanjing tightly, Saber pointed the invisible sword in her hand at Ryder in front of her. Her eyes were filled with annoyance. What did you do to Jian Tanjing? Hearing this, Ryder just raised his head and looked at Saber, who was hugging Tong-ing tightly. His face was as emotionless as usual, and his red lips moved slightly. Jian Tanjing's fainting has nothing to do with me. The meaning of Ryder's words was that he was not the one who caused Tosakura's coma. However, in Saber's ears, it meant, it doesn't matter if you're unconscious or not. Really? Saber held Jian Tanjing in one hand and held the sword in the other. Her face became calm. Are you Ryder's servant? How dare you attack my master? Then you can leave now. Do you want to start a war here? Ryder gripped the chain dagger in his hand. Although there's no order from master, I won't refuse. As soon as he finished speaking, the two servants in the ruined Jiantong residence looked at each other in the two craters that looked like craters. The atmosphere around them was on the verge of exploding. Just as the tense atmosphere between Saber and Ryder was about to explode, a figure swooped down from the sky and landed in the ruins of Jiantong's house. The sudden appearance of the intruder made Saber and Ryder stop the hostility that was about to erupt. You. Saber frowned, and the look in her eyes became dangerous. On the other hand, Ryder put away the chain dagger in his hand and leaped to the side of the intruder. Master. Ryder. Noah looked around and glanced at Saber, who was holding Jian Tangjing tightly. He realized that Jian Tangjing seemed to have lost consciousness, and his heart tightened. What happened? Jian Tangjing was attacked after she returned to Jiantong residence, Ryder explained concisely. I saved the girl, and the girl seemed to have used the command spell to summon Saber. Then, she fainted. Ryder did not need to explain what happened next. Noah could read the hostility in Saber's eyes. Saber must have been summoned by the command spell. When she saw Jian Tangjing fainted and saw the enemy's servant appear, she thought that Ryder had attacked her master. That was why they started fighting. As for the person who attacked Jian Tangjing, there was no need to guess. Jiantong Yanzi, Noah closed his eyes and used his sensing ability to scan the entire ruined Jian Tangjing residence. After he did not find any unfamiliar aura, he opened his eyes and narrowed his eyes. That old man is no longer here, Ryder seemed to have seen through Noah's thoughts and answered directly. After I attacked, the old man ran away. It seemed that Jiantong Yanzi thought that Saber was not by Jian Tangjing's side today, so he could not wait to attack Jian Tangjing. As a result, Ryder had been secretly protecting Jian Tangjing. When Jian Tangjing was attacked, he showed up to save her, causing Jiantong Yanzi to return empty-handed. He sensed that something was wrong and immediately ran away, right? After understanding the whole thing, Noah looked at Jian Tangjing, who was in Saber's arms. He lifted his feet and walked in the direction of Jian Tangjing and Saber. Let's stop there. Ryder's master. Almost at the moment when Noah lifted his feet, Saber raised the invisible sword in her hand and shot a sharp gaze directly at Noah. If you take another step forward, I'll take it that you intend to start a fight here. I won't hold back anymore. Hearing this, Noah stopped but did not avoid Saber's gaze. He looked straight at Saber and said calmly. You intend to fight me and Ryder when you have to protect the unconscious master? Are you serious? Saber's face tensed up. This time, Saber understood the deeper meaning of Noah's words. In a situation where she had to protect the unconscious master, to be honest, Saber had no chance of winning against Noah and Ryder. After all, in the previous battle, Ryder had already proven that he had the same level of strength as Saber. Saber, who had fought Noah before, also understood that Master Noah was not as weak as the other magicians. His strength was definitely not inferior to that of a servant. On one hand, he had to protect the unconscious Jian Tangjing, and on the other, he had to fight against two opponents of the same level. Even Saber did not dare to boast that she would win. Even so, Saber continued to stare at Noah with determination in her eyes. It was obvious that she had made up her mind. Once Noah decided to step forward, she would choose to fight no matter how unfavorable the situation was. This made Noah smile bitterly and say such a sentence. This morning, when I was practicing with Xiaoying in the archery department, the one who was secretly observing me was you, right? Saber was startled when she heard this, then her expression turned serious. So you really did notice? In other words, it was really you, right? Noah asked. Since you saw me practicing with Xiaoying in the dark, you should know that if I wanted to attack Xiaoying, there would be plenty of opportunities. There was no need to wait until now, right? Saber frowned when she heard that. Indeed. With Noah's strength, if he wanted to attack Xiaoying, there would be plenty of opportunities. There was no need to wait until now. Of course, that was also because Noah did not know that Xiaoying was master at that time. Since they were both masters, they were destined to be enemies. Saber could not guarantee that Noah, who was not hostile to Jian Tangjing at that time, would not harm her now that he knew that she was master. Moreover, Saber still thought that Ryder was the one who attacked her master. Seeing this, Noah did not say anything else and turned around. This is not the place to talk, come with me. Having said that, Noah led Ryder forward. Saber's gem-like eyes suddenly flickered a few times. She hesitated, but in the end, she carried Jian Tangjing and followed behind Noah and Ryder, leaving the Jian Tanjing residence in ruins. Chapter 742. It was nighttime. In Noah's apartment. The originally dark windows suddenly lit up, making the apartment that looked a little cold in the dark a little livelier. In the room with the light on, Saber held Tosakura and let her lie on the bed. Looking at Tosakura's closed eyes, unconscious, but more or less peaceful face, she secretly breathed a sigh of relief. In the room, except for Saber and Tosakura, there was only Noah. Ryder had already entered the state of spiritualization and went to the rooftop of the apartment to guard. In other words, excluding the unconscious Tosakura, there were only two people here, Noah and Saber. Looking at Saber, who was still wearing armor and sitting on the edge of the bed, staring at Tosakura's face, Noah, who was leaning against the wall next to the door with his arms crossed, spoke. "Is there still no sign of waking up?" Saber slowly shook her head and said softly. "The inside of the body seems to have been impacted by magic, and even that a magic circuit, that was originally in a closed state has entered a state of chaos. Her nerves must have been affected, and she shouldn't be able to wake up in a short time." "The inside of the body has been impacted by magic?" Noah wondered aloud. Why would the inside of Sakura's body be impacted by magic? "I'm not very sure," Saber said without looking back. "However, if I'm not wrong, it should be the effect of forcibly using the command spell, right?" "Forcibly using the command spell?" Noah frowned slightly, but still nodded. Originally, one of Tosakura's command spells was transferred to the Book of False Official, so that Saber's right of use was transferred to the Book of False Official, making Shinji Tosakura the master of Saber. Under such circumstances, even if Tosakura still had two command spells in her hands, she was still the real master of Saber. After the servant's right of use was transferred, it was unknown whether she could use the command spell in her hands normally while Shinji Tosakura's Book of False Official was still in effect. Noah didn't know whether Tosakura's command spell could still be used in this situation. But it seemed that because there were two people controlling Saber, Tosakura, who used the command spell, was more or less affected. If Tosakura was a magician, then it would be fine. The problem was that Tosakura, let alone a magician, didn't even open the magic circuit in her body. There was only an extremely weak magic. Since there was another person controlling Saber, it was not surprising that forcefully using the command incantation would be affected. At this moment, Saber suddenly spoke again. "Of course, originally, I even had some doubts about whether Sakura used the command spell to summon me." These words caused Noah to raise his eyebrows, and he subconsciously uttered, "That's right." "What does that mean?" Saber didn't answer immediately, but turned her head and looked straight at Noah, as if she wanted to see through Noah. After a long time, she closed her eyes. "You should already know that the one providing me with magic now is not Sakura, nor is it Shinji Tosakura. Even if these two people are my master, the one providing me with magic has always been the mysterious power in Sakura's body that has always been protecting her, right?" Noah didn't hide it and directly nodded, admitting that he knew the current state of Saber and Tosakura. "To be honest, regarding this matter, I have been thinking about it for a long time." Saber looked up slightly and said to Noah, "Logically speaking, the one who provides me with magic should be master. Let's not talk about Mamatsuki Shinji first. Ever since I was summoned to this era by Sakura, I feel that the channel that provides me with magic is not connected to Sakura, who should be master. Instead, it was connected to another place from the beginning. The command spell given to the master is the same. It should be connected to the magic circuit of Sakura, who is the master, but in my feeling, it is also not connected to Sakura's magic circuit, but connected to another place." Saber said in a deep voice. "It's as if there is another existence that is my real master." Hearing Saber's words, Noah was silent. This situation was indeed quite strange. However, this also explained why Saber's ability value was so outstanding when the master, Tosakura and Shinji Tosakura, had very little magic. Then, there was only one question left. What was the mysterious power that had been protecting Tosakura? Why was Saber's mana channel connected to the mysterious power when she was summoned? Why would the mysterious power provide her with mana? Why was Tonging no longer protected by the mysterious power? Was it because Tosakura herself did not have much magic, so the mysterious power automatically connected the channel? Or was the mysterious power related to Saber? Or perhaps, both of them? Although I don't know if the command spell on Sakura can be used when Shinji Tosakura has the Book of the False Official, I feel that it should not be used by Sakura herself. While Noah was deep in thought, Saber's voice slowly echoed and passed into Noah's ears. Perhaps it is the channel that is connected to me and provides me with magic, so that the mysterious power that can't spare any extra magic to protect Sakura is automatically activated when Sakura is in danger, and that a command spell is triggered. Hearing this, Noah was surprised. Can the mysterious power give you orders? I guess it's just some sort of automatic protection function, Saber said. According to Sakura, the mysterious power automatically appeared when she was in danger in the past without Sakura's consent and protected Sakura. From this point, it is possible that the automatic protection function of the mysterious power triggered the activation of the command spell, and after that the command spell was activated, because it did not receive the host's order, it directly executed the choice of summoning me. Saber had just said that not only the channel of magic, but even that the command spell, that should be connected to Tosakura's magic circuit, seemed to be connected to the mysterious power, making Saber seem to have another real master. Then, if the mysterious power really activated the automatic protection function, it might really trigger the command spell and summon Saber to Sakura's side. Of course, at best, this is just my feeling. Saber added. However, I think that this should be the case. Sakura fainted from the impact of magic, and it could also be caused by the automatic activation of the command spell. Listening to this, Noah's head hurt more and more. Noah could understand Saber's words. However, the most fundamental problem was still not solved. What was the mysterious power? That was the most fundamental problem. To be able to ignore the contract between the master and the servant, to take the initiative to establish a channel of magic with Saber, and to connect the command spell that controlled Saber, and to trigger the activation of the command spell when it automatically protected Sakura? What was the mysterious power? Moreover, automatic protection? At the end of the day, it seemed that this automatic protection function had protected Tosakura for more than 10 years, and when Tosakura's magic was insufficient, it automatically connected the channel of magic with Saber, and at the moment when Tosakura was in danger, it forcibly triggered the command spell. Everything seemed to be related to the nature of the protection. That power thoroughly displayed the nature of protection to the fullest. Noah had always been a little concerned about the power that could perform protection to this extent. The more he thought about it, the more concerned Noah became. Under Saber's gaze, he came to Tosakura's side. Chapter 743. Looking at Yu Tongying, who was lying on the bed and sleeping peacefully, Noah sat on the edge of the bed and reached out his hand towards Yu Tongying. Pa! Just as Noah was about to touch Tongying, a slender hand suddenly reached out and grabbed Noah's wrist tightly. Noah was not surprised at all. He just turned his head and looked to the side. Saber, who was wearing armor, was staring at Noah with her gem-like eyes. Her gaze was as clear as the surface of a lake, as if she wanted to see through Noah completely. Noah did not avoid Saber's gaze. Instead, he met Saber's gaze and looked back at her calmly. Seeing this, Saber's clear eyes rippled again. After a while, as if she had concluded that Noah would not do anything to her master, Saber slowly let go of Noah's wrist. However, she did not shift her gaze away from Noah. Obviously, although she had chosen to agree with Noah's actions, Saber did not completely trust Noah and was still wary of him. This was not surprising. After all, Noah and Tongying were both masters. As long as they wanted to win and obtain the Holy Grail, masters were destined to kill each other. Compared to dealing with servants who were much more powerful than ordinary humans, it was obviously easier to deal with masters. As long as the master was killed, there would be no reason for them to appear in this world. Unless they had the ability to act alone, the servant who lost the master would disappear and withdraw from the war. Therefore, to the servant, protecting the master's safety was almost more important than hiding their real name and their trump card. Today, Noah and Saber met for the first time. In terms of identity, the two were also enemies. Therefore, it was natural that Saber would be wary of Noah. Or rather, to allow Noah to check on Tong Ying's condition and follow Noah to the enemy's base camp, Saber had already made a lot of concessions. Therefore, Noah would not ask her to trust him. Under Saber's surveillance, he pressed his hand on Tong Ying's hand and closed his eyes. When he was in the Suigun Plains Academy, Noah felt his own magical aura on Tong Ying's body. Now, Noah fully activated his sensing ability. Together with a trace of magical power, he injected it into Tong Ying's body through her hand. It flowed slowly like a stream. At this time, Noah's magical power carried his own sensing ability like a radar. While it flowed through Tong Ying's body, it also allowed Noah's sensing ability to extend into Tong Ying's body and explore it bit by bit. It didn't take long for Noah to feel that he seemed to have entered a wonderful space composed of electric wires. The electric wiring was the magic circuit of Tsushima. Because Tong Ying's magic circuit had not been activated at all, Noah could only feel an extremely weak magical power wandering outside the magic circuit. Even after going so deep, he could only feel such a small amount of magical power. No wonder Noah could not feel Tong Ying's magical power when he was outside. In this wonderful space full of electric wires, Noah looked around and soon stopped in one direction. There was a passage that was much wider, more dazzling and brighter than any of the magic circuits in Tong Ying's body. It seemed to extend from the depths of Tong Ying's body and directly connected to a void. Above, an extremely considerable amount of magical power was surging, passing through the passage from the depths of Tong Ying's body, flowing into the connected void and disappearing. No. It did not disappear. Instead, it flowed into the body of another existence. There was no need to think about it. It was the magical power passage that connected the mysterious power in Tong Ying's body and Saber. Looking at the passage that looked like a transparent column that led to the sky, Noah's eyes narrowed little by little. Because the magical power flowing in that passage all had the aura of Noah's magical power. What did this prove? It proved that the magical power should have been Noah's. Why was his magical power in such a place? This was Noah's biggest question. Noah did have the experience of injecting magical power into Tong Ying's body several times. But that should have been consumed in treating Tong Ying's foot injury, right? Only when the magical power was directly used could one person's magical power be injected into another person's body. And if one person wanted to use and store another person's magical power, then it could only be done by replenishing the magical power. The passage that extended from the depths of Tong Ying's body was obviously providing Noah's magical power to Saber. Using an outsider's magical power in one's own body like this could only be achieved by replenishing the magical power. At least, that was the case in this world. Could it be that his magical power was not consumed in treating Tong Ying's injury, but because of the mysterious power, it was stored in an alternative way and used? At this time, Noah thought of Tong Ying's small tuft of hair that had somehow turned purple, but had his own magical aura. Don't tell me it's because my magic is being used in such an unconventional way that I'm not even a magician, and the magic circuit was caused by the body of Tong Ying, who hasn't even been activated, right? Just like the effect of the command spell on Tong Ying's body. Thinking of this, Noah hid all the guesses in his heart, and his mind followed the other end of the magical passage that extended to Saber, that was, the depths of Tong Ying's body, and gradually sank. This sinking, how long did it take? In this case, the concept of time did not work at all. At a certain moment, following the magical passage, Noah, who had been sinking into the depths of Tong Ying's body, suddenly saw a light in front of his eyes. A very bright, very familiar light. That light was the end of one end of Saber's mana pathway. When Noah saw the full appearance of the light, his mind was shocked. Noah saw it clearly. At the end of the magical passage, there was an object in the dazzling light. Scabbard. A scabbard with eye-catching blue enamel as decoration on the golden metal surface, and a long-lost fairy script in the middle, flashing with dazzling brilliance. That scabbard, for Noah, was very familiar. Because that was the relic that Noah accidentally lost in another parallel world. It was known as the utopia away from the mortal world, and also known as the fairyland. It had an extremely deep relationship with King Arthur, who was once the king of Great Britain in Kettle's mythology. Through the hands of Gaia and Alay, it was the relic that recognized Noah as its master. Avalon now, the relic that had been lost once, in this form, once again appeared in front of Noah's eyes. Looking at the scabbard that was flowing with dazzling brilliance, Noah fell into a daze for a moment. Why? Why is my scabbard here? While Noah's heart was filled with doubts, the golden scabbard was like a bird that had met its master, and it made a cheerful vibration sound. Immediately, a burst of dazzling light burst out from the gorgeous scabbard, like a wave, drowning Noah's figure. Noah almost subconsciously closed his eyes. At the same time, a picture drilled into Noah's mind. It was a picture of two black-haired little girls playing in a park under the sunset. In the picture, one of the two black-haired little girls ran out of the park. The other suddenly drilled into the grass in the park and dug up the grass there. A gorgeous scabbard appeared there. When the little girl curiously touched it, it turned into a light and drilled into her body. Chapter 744. When Noah opened his eyes again, he looked at Ji Tanjing, who was lying on the bed, with a complicated expression. Noah really did not expect this. He did not expect that his scabbard would be lost to another parallel world during the battle with Bio, and that it would be obtained by Ji Tanjing. At that time, in order to ensure that Qing Zi and Yu Zhu would be able to deal with Orange, Noah left Avalon on the battlefield where Qing Zi, Yu Zhu, and Orange were having a magic battle. He let Avalon protect Qing Zi and Yu Zhu. In the end, because of Orange's discovery, Avalon was directly sent flying by Orange. It fell into the space crack created during the battle between Noah and Bio, and was lost. It was at that time that Avalon was lost to this parallel world, and it was obtained by Ji Tanjing, who was still a child at that time. In order to ensure the safety of Qing Zi and Yu Zhu, at that time, Noah stored a lot of magic power in Avalon. Perhaps it was because of the protective nature of Avalon itself, in addition to the fact that Noah, in order to protect Qing Zi and Yu Zhu at that time, not only did he store enough magic to use it, but he also let Avalon enter automatic use mode. Avalon, which was touched by Tong Yingying, automatically integrated into Tong Yingying's body. In order to protect Tong Yingying, he used Noah's magic to protect Tong Yingying for more than 10 years, right? Such a coincidence actually caused Ji Tanjing's originally tragic fate to be changed, and it was delayed until now. It was delayed until now, when Noah once again came in front of Avalon. Noah had always been inexplicably concerned about Ji Tanjing. In the past, he did not know why, but now, Noah finally understood. It was because, more than 10 years ago in this parallel world, Noah and Ji Tanjing had formed an indistinct but inseparable relationship without each other's knowledge. Of course, Avalon itself only had the nature of protection. It would definitely not take the initiative to connect with Saber in order to reduce the burden on Tong Sakura and provide the magic stored in the scabbard that belonged to Noah to Saber, thus causing Tong Sakura, who was supposed to be protected, to lose her protection. There must be another reason why Noah's Avalon would take the initiative to connect with Saber's magic power. Noah already had a guess about this reason. At that moment, Noah turned his head and looked at Saber, who had been staring at him all this time. He opened his mouth and said such a sentence. "You are King Arthur of Great Britain, right?" When this sentence came out of Noah's mouth and echoed in the room, the moment it drilled into Saber's ears, Saber's gem-like pupils suddenly shrank, and a trace of shock appeared on her face. Seeing this, Noah knew that his guess was completely correct. King Arthur of Great Britain. The famous Knight King in Celtic mythology. The one who recruited the Knight of the Lake, Lancelot, whose reputation was no less than his own, single-handedly established the Knights of the Round Table, with countless elite knights under his command. After inheriting the throne, he won 12 major battles in a short 10 years, bringing the whole of Great Britain to its peak. Such an existence was actually a woman? And such a slender young girl? Noah's shock was imaginable. However, if Saber was the Night King, then why would Avalon connect with her magic power and provide Noah's magic power to her? Phenomenon could be explained. After all, before it recognized Noah as its master, Avalon belonged to the Night King. Legend had it that the Night King of Great Britain was once blessed by the Lake Elves, and received an invincible holy sword from the Lake Elves. That was the holy sword that symbolized King Arthur's most powerful and most honorable period. It was at the pinnacle of the category of holy sword and was not forged by humans. Instead, it was one of the ultimate godly armaments that was born as the strongest fantasy, by crystallizing inside the planet using people's yearning as raw material. The godly armaments that were originally managed by the Star Elves passed through the hands of the Lake Elves and into the hands of King Arthur, becoming the symbol of this king. And Avalon was the scabbard of this holy sword that was at the pinnacle of mythology. Originally, after the Night King passed away and became a heroic spirit, it should have also become the symbol of the existence of King Arthur's power in the form of a noble artifact. However, when the Night King was alive, he accidentally lost this important scabbard, allowing Avalon to be passed down to this day, becoming one of the few noble artifacts that truly existed in this world. Then, under the modification of Gaia and Alea, this scabbard became Noah's noble artifact. Even so, Avalon was still the possession of the Night King. At least, it used to be. Therefore, when Saber was summoned by the former master, the scabbard had a reaction. In order to reduce the burden on Saber, who was the target of protection but lacked magic power, and to replace Saber to maintain the existence of its former master, it took the initiative to connect with the magic power circuit and provide magic power to Saber. Or rather, it was precisely because of this scabbard in his body that the Night King was summoned by Jian Tongying as a saber. After all, with the nature of a holy relic, Avalon, which once belonged to Saber, was enough to be used as a catalyst to summon a servant and summon Saber. And it was because of Avalon's special treatment for Saber that this scabbard would play a wholeheartedly protective role no matter whose servant Saber became. While reducing the burden on Tsaritsu Sakura, it also provided magic power to its former master to maintain its existence and strength. Chapter 745. After Saber moved into the apartment, Noah, who had completely solved the mystery of Tima Tongjiang, could finally have a good night's sleep. In the past few days, Noah basically did not have a good night's sleep. On the first night after arriving in this world, Noah woke up in the early hours of the morning because of the appearance of the stigmata. On the second night after arriving in this world, because of summoning Rider, Noah made a lot of noise all night. Although he did not lack sleep, he could not sleep well either. On the third night after arriving in this world, he was attacked by Lancer. After knowing the existence of Berserker, Noah also worked hard all night because of this. On the fourth night after Noah arrived in this world, Noah and Rin Enbin encountered Berserker in the forest. After a battle with Berserker, they formed an alliance and formed a cooperative relationship. Then, they met the mysterious blonde man. Noah had a lot of things to think about that night, so he couldn't sleep well. Then, yesterday, on the fifth night after arriving in this world, Noah was attacked by Saber, who was brought by the fake master Shinji Tima. As a result, it involved the matter between Tima Tongjiang and the Tima Tongjiang family, and learned about Tima Tongjiang's experience and secrets in the past 10 years. Also, the discovery of Avalon. In other words, after arriving in this world, Noah had already spent a long 5 days and 5 nights. Today was the 6th day since Noah arrived in this world. Undoubtedly, so many things had happened one after another, but only 5 days had passed. Even Noah felt that it was a bit unbelievable. However, after so many twists and turns, the Holy Grail War had officially begun. Tima Tongjiang summoned Saber on the night when Noah and Rin Enbin encountered Berserker and concluded a cooperative relationship with each other, and exchanged the right to use Saber to Shinji Tima. According to Saber, that night, Shinji Tima went to the church to report and learn from the supervisor of the Holy Grail War that assassin had been summoned. In other words, the 7 masters and the 7 servants had all been gathered. Next, the Holy Grail War officially began. Of course, if people knew that before the Holy Grail War began, there were 3 servants who had already met and could not fight, their expressions would be very interesting. The next day, Noah, who finally had a good night's sleep, woke up, after a simple wash, and then went to the room where Tima, Tanjing and Saber were resting. Noah's apartment was originally 2 bedrooms and 1 living room. Therefore, in addition to the room where Noah was sleeping, the other room was given to Tima's and Saber to rest. Opening the door and walking into the room, Noah's expression, more or less. Because, Saber's sleep, because, Saber was also, Saber's, was. At this time, the armor on the girl, who was so slender that it was impossible to associate her with the Queen of Knights of Great Britain in Celtic mythology, had disappeared, revealing the blue and white dress under the armor. After removing the breastplate, gauntlets, and boots, the young lady was dressed in a blue and white formal attire. She leaned against the edge of Yu Tongying's bed, her head resting next to Yu Tongying's. In the standard sitting posture of a young lady, she fell into a deep sleep. The delicate and lovely doll-like sleeping face, and Tima Tanjing's peaceful face, made people feel warm in their hearts, and they couldn't bear to break such a beautiful scene. Unfortunately, Saber was not an ordinary girl, but a heroic spirit who came as a servant. As the winner of 12 major battles in the past, Saber was also the strongest of the 7 classes in the Holy Grail War. The girl woke up almost as soon as Noah opened the door and walked into the room. Sorry. Seeing Saber wake up, Noah subconsciously apologized. Did I wake you up? No, it's not like that. Saber shook her head gently. I've had enough sleep. Even if you didn't come, I would have woken up. Is that so? Noah scratched his cheek. I thought you didn't need to sleep like Ryder. Yes, as a spirit, a servant doesn't need to sleep. Saber raised her eyes slightly and looked at Noah. It's just that, if I enter a state of sleep, I can avoid the consumption of magic caused by unnecessary activities. So, for me, sleep is still necessary. Noah raised his eyebrows. You should have enough magic, right? Do you still need to avoid unnecessary consumption? Although it was somewhat boastful, Noah was confident that the magic power he had left in Avalon, even though it had consumed a lot in order to protect Tong Yingying in the past 10 years, should be barely enough to provide a servant with enough magic power. In addition, in the past, Noah had infused magic into Tong Ying several times in order to heal her foot injury. Although the magic was not much, most of it seemed to be absorbed by Avalon, which led to the recovery of Avalon, which was about to exhaust its magic and protected Tong Ying for a while. Saber's ability value was almost the same as Berserker's, and her magic value was also the highest level of A, so Saber should have enough magic, right? Did she still need to avoid unnecessary consumption? I'm only doing this as a precaution. Saber turned her gaze to Tong Ying. After I was summoned to this era and connected to the mana pathway to provide me with mana to maintain my existence and power, the mysterious power in Xiao Ying's body lost its protective effect. This proves that the mysterious power doesn't have enough mana to provide me with mana and protect Xiao Ying at the same time. This also proves that the power is actually limited. Currently, it's enough to provide me with mana, but I don't know when that power will be exhausted by me. Thus, it's best to avoid wasting mana if possible. Hearing this, Noah understood. Indeed, although the remaining magic in the scabbard was enough to provide Saber, it was also limited. After all, the magic in the scabbard would not automatically recover. It would need to be provided by its master, Noah, to continue to be effective and useful. Under such circumstances, after providing it to Saber, it would not be able to protect Tong Ying at the same time. Judging from the remaining magic in the scabbard, it would be fine if Saber only carried out her daily activities and ordinary battles. However, if she used a noble phantasm that required a large amount of magic to support, it would be a little bad. What's more, Saber's noble phantasm was an A++ level. The higher the level, the more magic it would need to consume. Therefore, if Saber used a noble phantasm, it would probably only take 2 or 3 times for the magic in the scabbard to be exhausted, right? Thinking of this, Noah came to Tong Ying's side and sat on the edge of the bed. He held Tong Ying's hand and the magic in his body surged violently into Tong Ying's body. This time, Noah felt it. After the magic was poured into Tong Ying's body, the golden scabbard trembled violently and absorbed a large amount of magic flowing in Tong Ying's body. Perhaps it was because it had not received enough magic from its master for more than 10 years. The scabbard was like a whale sucking in water. It absorbed a large amount of magic that Noah instilled into it, causing the bright brilliance to become more and more dazzling. At this moment, Saber suddenly exclaimed, My power." Hearing Saber's exclamation, Noah was also stunned. When he saw Saber's current ability value, he was stunned. Occupation, Sabermaster, Tong Ying. Real name, Altoria Pendragon. Attribute, Order to good ability value, Strength, A durability, A agility, A magic, A plus luck, A noble phantasm, A plus plus. Chapter 746. Job rank, Sabermaster, Tosecurarial name, Artoria Pendragon. Attribute, Order to good ability value, Strength, A durability, A agility, A magic power, A plus luck, A noble phantasm, A plus plus. Looking at Saber's ability value at this moment, Noah was completely stunned. For a moment, he couldn't react. Originally, as the job rank with the highest requirement for ability value, a servant who could become Saber would only be a hero spirit of the highest level. There would definitely not be a hero spirit that was too weak to occupy this job rank. Therefore, Saber was called the strongest job rank. And the Night King, whose real name was Artoria, was also worthy of being called the strongest job rank. Originally, her ability value was enough to be compared to the monster Berserker. However, now, Saber's ability value was not only comparable to Berserker's, but also slightly higher than that monster's. If it were not for Berserker's noble phantasm, Saber would definitely be the strongest servant in this Holy Grail war. No, considering that Saber's noble phantasm was still A++ level, once she used her noble phantasm, perhaps even Berserker would not be Saber's opponent. Why? Why did Saber's ability value suddenly increase? Just as such a question emerged in his mind, Noah reacted. As mentioned before, it was not only the magic channel. Even the command spell, that was supposed to be connected to Tosakura's magic circuit, seemed to be connected to Avalon's body along with the channel. This caused Avalon to trigger the activation of the command spell, because of its automatic protection characteristics when Tosakura was in danger. This way, it was as if Avalon had become Saber's master. And the ability value of a servant was generally dependent on the magic power of the master. Because Avalon was special to Saber, no matter if Saber's master was Tosakura or Shinji Tosakura, it had always been the one who provided the magic power. Saber's ability value did not change in the slightest because the control was in the hands of Tosakura or Shinji Tosakura. This further proved that Avalon was an existence similar to Saber's master. At the very least, the one who determined Saber's power was not Tamahira Sakura or Tamahira Shinji, but Avalon. Therefore, Avalon was more like Saber's master. That was why Saber had said, "It's like there's another being who is my true master." Then, under such circumstances, after the magic stored in Avalon, which was more like Saber's master than Tong Ying, had undergone a tremendous change due to Noah's infusion, it was not surprising that Saber's ability value as a servant would also change. In other words, because of Noah, Saber had become stronger. However, if Avalon was Saber's true master, then as the master of Avalon, what was Noah to Saber? After all, in the current situation, rather than Avalon providing Saber with magic power, it was better to say that Noah was providing Saber with magic power. Thinking of this, Noah could not help but smile bitterly. Then, Saber, who reacted, frowned and looked at Noah. "What did you do?" Saber could feel that Noah had instilled magic into Tosakura's body. However, Saber did not understand why her own power suddenly increased after Noah instilled magic into Tosakura's body. But there was no doubt that such a change must be related to Noah's infusion of magic into Tosakura's body. This made Saber look at Noah with a sharp gaze. Although this change was a good thing for Saber, when she thought of another master doing something to her own master and affecting her as a servant, Saber, who had not completely eliminated her hostility towards Noah, who was her master, was annoyed. "I respect you as a rare master in this era, so I chose to trust you and bring Sakura here," Saber said as she stared at Noah. "But if you plan to do something to my master, then we have nothing to say, Rider's master." Last night, Noah suddenly inexplicably found out Saber's true identity. If it were not for the fact that Tosakura was not a magician and could easily be controlled by others, and thus leaked important information, Saber would definitely suspect that Noah used some kind of magic to read Tosakura's memory. Even so, Saber had enough reason to suspect that Noah did something to Tosakura. Otherwise, Saber would not have suddenly changed like this. Seeing that Saber's eyes were already filled with hostility, Noah's bitter smile deepened. "Forget it, even if I tell you that I did nothing, you probably won't believe me. So, I won't say anything. Whether or not I really did something to Sakura, let time prove everything." After that, Noah stood up and walked out of the room. "Before that, my partner should be almost here. If you want to know how we'll deal with you now, then come over." Leaving these words, Noah walked out of the room. Noah wanted to try and see if Saber could be upgraded if he continued to replenish Avalon's magic. However, looking at Saber, she probably wouldn't let Noah contact Tosakura without any reason. After the replenishment just now, Avalon already had a lot of magic stored in it. While supplying it to Saber, it should be able to continue protecting Tosakura. So, let's stop here. In the room, Saber had been staring at Noah's back. She only lowered her head when Noah's back disappeared from her sight. Her beautiful brows were furrowed. She glanced at the sleeping Mitsubishi Sakura and felt her current state. Then, she murmured to herself. "That man, he must be hiding something." About half an hour later, Rin and Osaka arrived at Noah's apartment. Sitting on a chair, Rin and Osaka looked at Noah, who was leisurely leaning on the sofa, and Saber, who was standing at the door of Tosakura's room. Rin and Osaka's expression was complicated. After a long time, Rin and Osaka took a deep breath and looked directly at Noah. "I know the details. Sakura has indeed become a master, and she summoned Saber's servant. Am I right to understand that?" Noah sighed inwardly when he heard Rin Enben's words. Just now, not only did Noah tell Rin and Osaka about Tosakura's situation, but he also told Rin and Osaka about the girl's past 10 years. After hearing about Tosakura's situation, Rin and Osaka's face was filled with shock, disbelief, anger, and regret. It was enough to prove that Rin and Osaka didn't care about Tosakura. But now, Rin and Osaka didn't mention Tosakura's situation. Instead, he brought up the topic related to the Holy Grail War. Rin and Osaka chose to face this matter as a magician. From Shinji Tosakura's words, Noah knew that Tosakura actually came from another magic family in Fuyuki City. Because there was already a sister who was the heir, she was adopted by the Tosakura family. Therefore, Noah suspected Rin and Osaka was Tosakura's sister. Before he became a heroic spirit, it was very difficult for him to even use enhance. However, he had another magic that could be said to be unique. He could replicate almost perfect weapons, including the composition of materials. When he replicated, he could even read the effects of the master's skills. Even the servant's noble phantoms and combat skills were no exception. Only when he used this magic, the skill would be upgraded to A+ level. Only when special magic was used would an exception be made to upgrade the skill to A+ level. He could replicate weapons almost perfectly. When he replicated, he could even read the effects of the owner's skills. Even the servant's noble phantoms and combat skills were no exception. The pair of swords was replicated with this skill. "I'm sorry, Saber." Archer pointed the white short sword in Saber's direction. He seemed to be satisfied with Saber's surprised expression and smirked. "Although I'm an archer, I prefer close combat. You can call me a mutant or pretend, but don't think that I don't have the power to fight." Heroic spirit of the sword. "Is that so?" Saber calmed down and raised the invisible sword in her hand and stared at Archer. At the same time, Rin Tozaka silently retreated to the side, but his eyes kept glancing at the direction of Tosakura's room. It seemed that he wanted to break in and take away Tosakura's command spell, when Archer was entangled with Saber. Just when the battle between Saber and Archer was about to explode, Noah, who was sitting on the sofa and watching, suddenly felt something. A weak aura suddenly appeared in the apartment and went into one of the rooms. It was Tosakura's room. Chapter 748. The sudden aura caused Noah to be slightly startled. Then, his expression changed and he abruptly stood up. Not only Noah, but Saber and Archer, who had intuition and mind's eye, also sensed the abnormality. The atmosphere between the two of them froze for a moment, and everything froze in the air. The first one to move was naturally Saber, who was the closest to Tanjing's room, even at the door. Whoosh! Saber did not hesitate to turn around and suddenly rushed into Tanjing's room. Bang! In the next moment, in the small room of the apartment, a muffled sound like an explosion suddenly resounded. Accompanied by a wave of impact, the door was sent flying, setting off a violent gust of wind that blew towards the hall outside. In front of Rin Isaka, who did not have time to react, Archer used his pair of black and white short swords to block in front of his master, blocking the violent wind. Noah, who was the furthest away from Tanjing's room, was the least affected. Almost at the same time that the muffled explosion and violent wind blew out of Tanjing's room, he dodged the wind and rushed into Tanjing's room. Soon after, a scene filled with thick smoke and dust appeared before Noah's eyes. The entire room was being ravaged by the violent wind and waves, turning into a sorry state. At the front of the room, where the window should have been, a huge hole had been blasted open. Fragments of the wall continued to fall. As for Tanjing, she had already disappeared in the direction of the broken bed, and even Saber, who rushed into the room, had disappeared. Seeing this, Noah completely subconsciously understood the next step. He rushed in front of the big hole in the wall and looked down at the bottom of the apartment. Tanjing's room just happened to be facing the direction of the main road. So, behind the apartment was not a main road, but an open field. On the open field, Saber, who was holding an invisible sword, tightly held Tanjing, who was still unconscious, and stared at the figure in front of her. It was a figure that looked very tall, and it was obvious that it was a woman's figure. The figure was covered in a purple and black robe. The hood of the robe covered the person's head, so that everyone could only see the person's face below the eyes. At this moment, on the face that didn't even reveal the eyes, the small red mouth slightly curved into a charming smile, making the figure under the long robe seem to be full of evil aura. Profession, Caster Master. Real name? Attribute, neutral, evil ability points, strength, E durability, D agility, C magic power, A plus luck, B noble phantasm, C profession skills, position creation, AA servant with the profession of caster has the ability to make a position to collect magic power. Even if the amount of magic power it has is not much, it can also gather magic power by spreading the position, and it can become more advanced magic. Prop. Noah's gaze became somewhat thought-provoking. Undoubtedly, you are a servant yourself, but you think that servant is a prop. That's just for you. Caster covered his mouth with a black glove and said such a sentence. After all, you can even deal with Saber and Berserker. For you, that kind of servant can only be regarded as a prop, right? Hearing Caster's words, Noah reacted to one of the information revealed in this sentence. You can even deal with Berserker? It's useless to hide it now. When you were fighting with Berserker, I was watching in the dark. Caster stretched out his hand in the direction of Noah. So, Rider's Master, do you want to join forces with me? This sentence made Saber and Archer frown. Rope in? Rin Osaka, who was observing the situation from the apartment building with a large hole in it, spoke up. I'm sorry, Caster, we have already joined forces. Hearing that, Castor just glanced at Rin Isaka's direction and immediately looked at Noah again. Since even that useless little girl can be your partner, there is no reason why I can't, right? Useless little girl? Rin Isaka's eyes twitched fiercely. At best, she's just a magician who doesn't even know how to use magic. As for me, the level of magic I can use will only be higher, should be more worthy of cooperation than that little girl. Castor still ignored Rin Isaka, even Saber and Archer, and tried to throw an olive branch to Noah. Perhaps, in your opinion, as a caster in this Holy Grail war, is too big a disadvantage. After all, it is called the weakest class, but I have also made a lot of preparations. If you follow me, you will find that it is not so difficult to get the Holy Grail. Castor's words directly surprised the rest of the people present. Even Rin Isaka's face slightly sank, and he sneered. You know that you can't deal with so many masters and servants at once, so you plan to make us waver, win a partner, and weaken our strength. You have worked hard. What? Little girl? Do you think I'm talking big? Castor didn't care about Rin Isaka's provocation. He said to Noah with a smile. I believe that a smart person should be able to distinguish whether my words are true or not. I am definitely worthy of your trust, Writer's Master. When this sentence came out from Castor's mouth, Noah aside, Archer, who was standing next to Rin Isaka, laughed. A witch who specializes in evil actually said that she is trustworthy. Don't laugh at me. The atmosphere of the scene suddenly changed. Even in the face of 2 masters and 2 servants, Castor's aura became evil and violent. He stared in Archer's direction. His silver teeth were tightly clenched together. Even his voice became full of resentment. You called me a witch? You dare to call me a witch? Seeing Castor's mood suddenly became so agitated, everyone present, including Noah, was surprised. Even Castor himself seemed to feel that his emotions were too agitated. He took a deep breath and suppressed the irritation in his tone, but the voice that echoed in the air became indifferent and ruthless. I wanted to talk to you a little bit, but unfortunately, my mood has become very bad now, so, let's play. After saying such a sentence, Castor's body slowly floated in the air, his robe directly spread out like a bat's wings, and his body fluctuated with unusually strong magical power. Immediately afterward, his cold voice turned into an echo, which spread throughout the entire space. Those who call me a witch will all die. As soon as Castor finished his words, purple magic circles that looked like eyeballs suddenly rotated out of his robe. They were like cannons, aiming at the people below. Noah's eyes suddenly narrowed. Saber flashed and came in front of Noah, who was holding Noah, and it seemed that she intended to protect Noah and Tama Tongin together. However, the magic circle that turned into a battery suddenly turned and aimed at Rin Isaka and Archer in the apartment. In the next instant, dense mana surged through the numerous cannon-like magic arrays. Finally, it converged into a beam of light, and burst out, falling in the direction of Rin Isaka and Archer below. Chapter 750. Buzz. Even the space and atmosphere were shaking. The light beam composed of magic was like lightning, like a laser. It flashed through the space, just like a storm falling from the sky. Raindrops fell in the direction of the apartment. Bang! 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 Just like missiles were launched one after another into the fragile apartment, the wall of the apartment that originally had a big hole was directly bombarded by the raindrops of the magic light beam, causing a series of big explosions. Boom! The seemingly solid wall burst under the violent bombardment of the magic light beam. The entire wall of the apartment that originally had a big hole was destroyed by the bombardment of the magic light beam, bursting out a cluster of gravel, scattering in all directions. Whoosh! The wind was blowing, smoke and dust were everywhere. The thick smoke and the hot fire covered the corner of the apartment, and the direction of the destroyed wall was covered. Clang! However, in the next moment, a light shield that seemed to be composed of 7 petals and seemed to be composed of pink light flashed from the smoke and fire that filled the air. Inside, Archer held out his hand as if he was holding the petal-like light shield, stared at Castor in the sky, and slowly said the name of the light shield. 7 rings of blazing heaven, law Ajax. 7 rings of burning heaven, law Ajax. In Greek mythology, the famous hero of the Trojan War, Ajax, was a noble phantasm named after Ajax. That was the shield used by Ajax. As a concept weapon that was proud of its absolute defense against throwing weapons, it was an expanded sublimation. It was regarded as a boundary relic that had an invincible defense against throwing weapons. Each petal represented a layer of defense. Each layer of defense was equivalent to a city wall. Archer used all his own magic to copy and project this noble phantasm. Behind him, Rin and Osaka was completely enraged by Castor. He was holding a gem tightly. Not only did you provoke me, but you also picked me as the first one to attack. Do you really think I won't get angry? In the angry voice, the gem in Rin Enben's hand burst open and turned into a red light. Like a meteor, it bypassed Archer's light shield and quickly shot in the direction of Castor. However, before that, a magic circle suddenly appeared in front of Castor like a shield, facing the red light that was coming toward him. Bang! The surface of the magic circle that turned into a shield ignited a burst of fire, but it couldn't touch Castor, which made Castor laugh. Using the gem as a trigger medium, that means you can transfer your magical power to the gem and write the magic formula. When you use the gem, you only need to trigger the magic that has already been prepared in the gem, and you can directly use it. You can even compress the chanting to the limit of magic, right? Interesting magic, isn't it? Little girl? It's an honor to be able to enter the eyes of Castor. Rin Enben smiled. Undoubtedly, it won't work. I wasted a precious gem. Really, I don't know any gem merchants. As long as you are a magician, you won't be able to win against Castor in a magic battle. Archer said without turning his head to look at Rin Enben. So, Rin, don't make a move. That's an accurate judgment, Archer. Castor sneered. As long as you are a magician, you can't win against me in a magic battle. As soon as these words were spoken, a faint voice resounded. Is that so? Why don't you try my magic? When that voice sounded, the whole space flashed with a dazzling light. It was a burst of light from a beam of light. A huge magic beam with a diameter of more than 2 meters suddenly rose from the ground. The friction became hot in the air, and in the chaotic twisting sound of the air, pierced through the space, and shot in the direction of Castor. Castor's face suddenly changed. Suddenly, an ancient staff appeared in his hand, and he held it in front of him. On the tip of the staff, a huge defensive magic circle suddenly popped up, protecting Castor. The massive beam of mana struck the defensive magic array. Dong! In the midst of a thunderous roar, the violent shockwaves and flames exploded in midair like fireworks, instantly illuminating the gloomy sky that was filled with purple mist. Bang! Under the bombardment of the huge magic beam, the defensive magic circle that appeared from the void burst open, exposing Castor to the terrifying light beam. Ah! Under Castor's scream, the beam of light directly fell on her body. Bang! A thunderous boom rang out once again. Looking at the entire sky filled with flames, Noah, who was hugging Tanjing tightly and kneeling on the ground with one knee, turned his head and looked in another direction with a magical formation composed of precise geometric patterns in front of him. At the same time, everyone present also looked in that direction. There, smoke was coming out from his body, the robe on his body was tattered, blood was oozing from the corner of his mouth, and he was clutching his chest. Castor was coughing violently, and he couldn't believe what he just saw. Is that a magic bullet? Impossible. Should they really say that Castor's servant? Judging from the unimaginably powerful magical light beam, no one would have imagined that it was a simple, basic magic trick that only processed magical power and shot it out, right? But Castor recognized it at a glance. It was because he recognized it that Castor was so shocked. Is that the magic you used to deal with Berserker? Impossible. Nothing is impossible. Noah looked straight at Castor and laughed at himself. Although it's just a magic spell that is launched after processing mana, it's precisely because of its simple nature that if the user's mana is beyond imagination, the power of the magic bullet will naturally increase accordingly. Unfortunately, I don't have much, but I have a lot of mana. That's why this magic spell became like this in my hands. It's not appropriate to call it magic bullet, right? Noah slowly raised the corner of his mouth. It's better to call it magic cannon. This name should be more appropriate for me. This time, it was Castor's turn to be irritated by Noah's attitude. You're a smart guy. In the shouting, Castor fiercely stretched out his hand. Attack! The surrounding Dragon Fang soldiers suddenly trembled. They suddenly raised their weapons and rushed toward Noah from all directions. It's a pity that Castor forgot. Here, in addition to Noah, Rin Anaka, and Archer, there was another one with the strongest strength. Don't even think about it. Along with this cold voice, a ray of sword light suddenly flashed through the air like a crescent moon. It expanded and swept past the Dragon Fang soldiers that were charging over from the surroundings. Bang! The Dragon Fang soldiers that were slashed by the crescent-like sword light were immediately broken into pieces. They all shattered like glass, scattering into bones that filled the sky and dissipated into thin air. All of them were caused by Saber, who was standing in front of Noah. So, what are you going to do? Noah sneered. In the face of the strongest swordsman, the fully developed archer, the magician you look down on, and the most basic magic, can you still be as confident as before? Castor's servant? Castor's face finally became extremely ugly. Chapter 751. Because the Castor class is known as the weakest class in the game, it is also disadvantageous to the other servants. Therefore, the Castor's servant is generally unlikely to face the other servants head-on. They are bound to consider other ways to win. And the strategy was obviously a key part. Castor didn't suddenly attack without thinking about anything. In order not to arouse Noah's vigilance, Castor deliberately chose to attack during the daytime, and he tried to hide his aura, trying to kill Tong Yingyur first. In Castor's plan, the most ideal result was naturally to deprive Tong Yingyur of her command, so that he could control Saber and make Saber his own combat power. With Saber's servant, plus the strongest magician who could use a variety of magic to support him, as Castor's servant, even if it was the most difficult to deal with Berserker, Castor was confident. When Castor found out that Ryder was not with Noah, Castor was even more confident. Unfortunately, this plan failed from the very beginning. In addition to Rin Anaka, Noah had the ability to sense things, Saber had the intuition skill, and Archer had the mind's eye skill. Even if Castor tried to hide his aura and chose to attack during the daytime, he was still discovered in the first place, leading to the failure of the plan. Of course, Castor didn't know that this plan had no possibility of success from the beginning. The reason was that Noah's scabbard was still hidden in Tong Yingyur's body, and because Noah had just added enough magical power to it, it could once again perform the duty of protection. Therefore, even if Castor was not discovered, when he attacked Tong Yingyur, the scabbard's protection would appear, and it was impossible to succeed. After the plan failed, Castor tried to pull Noah to his side, which also proved that Castor didn't come here without thinking about anything. However, Castor, who had always been thoughtful, was completely angered by Archer's call of witch. That led to Castor's current situation. Understanding this, Castor could only grit his teeth, but he didn't regret it. After all, for Castor, the title of witch was a taboo. Castor had already decided that those who called her a witch should be punished accordingly. However, Castor really didn't expect that the strength of these people was beyond his imagination. Saber's strength was much stronger than the previous servant who was Saber. Since Archer was able to engage in close combat and had a high-level defensive relic, he was not limited to long-range attacks. Noah was even more ridiculous. The most basic and simple magic bullet had been upgraded to a whole new level in his body. Not only did it become a complete magic cannon, he even had the strength to go head-to-head with Saber and Berserker. It could be said that he was breaking the rules. Only Rin Anaka was not a threat to Castor, but it was not that there was nothing to be proud of. At least, she could protect herself. A Saber with superior strength. An archer with no shortcomings. An excellent magician. There was also Master, whose strength was completely unknown. He was unfathomable and had astonishing abilities. No matter how he looked at it, Castor didn't seem to have a chance to win. In addition, although Ryder was not by Noah's side, Noah could summon Ryder back at any time. The situation became extremely unfavorable for Castor. In such a case, Castor could only hide his resentment toward Archer in the bottom of his heart and straighten his body that was full of wounds. Whoosh! A burst of magical power surged up around Castor's body, and Castor's injuries seemed to be smoking, and he recovered at a speed that was visible to the naked eye. Servant was originally just a spirit, and even her body was maintained in the real world with magical power. Therefore, as long as there was enough magical power, it was not impossible to use magical power to speed up the healing of injuries. What's more, with Castor's magical skills, there were many magical skills that could speed up the recovery of injuries. With the two superimposed, the seemingly amazing injury was completely healed in just a short time. If it was not a fatal injury, Castor believed that he could find a way to survive, right? The eyes hidden under the hood swept over Noah, Rin Enben, Saber, and Archer, and Castor suddenly smiled. I admit it, today, there is no way to do anything to you. Hearing that, Rin Enben was the first to react. What? Do you want to escape? Retreat is also a part of the tactic. Even if you are a heroic spirit, there is nothing to be ashamed of if you choose to retreat, right? Castor smiled coldly. But, next time, it won't be so easy. After that, Castor did not give Rin Enben a chance to refute. He looked directly at Noah. Think about my proposal, Ryder's master. I welcome you to come to my side at any time and share the Holy Grail with me. After leaving this sentence, Castor's robe covered his body. In the next moment, Castor disappeared without a trace. The surrounding purple fog also slowly dissipated. One by one, the Dragon Fang soldiers went into the mist and disappeared on the spot. The sky was restored to the light again. Obviously, the enchantment had been lifted. Seeing this scene, Rin Enben quickly said, "Chase him. Don't let Castor escape." Archer. Without making any answer, Archer directly entered the state of spirit form in the mist, and his aura gradually disappeared. Saber seemed to want to chase after him, but she was stopped by Noah. Don't chase him. Looking at the direction where Castor disappeared, Noah said. That servant's magic has reached the level of teleportation. Although there is a trace left, it is almost impossible to catch up with Castor. Saber's figure stagnated, and she frowned. Chapter 752. Although Castor had deployed a barrier after the start of the battle, so that the people outside couldn't notice the battle in the apartment. But before the battle started, in order to attack Tong Ying, Castor also rushed in with Saber, which caused a big hole in the apartment. Because it was daytime, such an explosion was impossible to not attract the attention of the surrounding people. So, when the enchantment was lifted and Castor retreated, Noah and the others heard the noise coming from the outside. They believed that if this continues, it was only a matter of time before the surrounding people found out about the destruction of the apartment. Looking up at the scene of the destroyed wall behind the apartment, Noah covered his face and sighed. What should we do? Report it to the church. Rin Isaka, who came down from the apartment, directly answered. Because it was a problem caused during the Holy Grail War, the church will deal with it. That's good. Noah suddenly felt happy. I thought I would have to pay for it this time. What's wrong? Rin Isaka said with a smile. Don't you know a jewelry merchant and sell jewelry? You must have a lot of money, right? I do have a little bit of savings. Noah curled his lips. But that doesn't mean I will be a fool. After experiencing several worlds, Noah also made a lot of money in other worlds because of various reasons and ways, and every time when he left that world, he would exchange all the money for gold, gems, and the like. That way, he could solve the money problem in other worlds. Therefore, although compared to the jewelry merchant and other rich people in Rin Isaka's words, compared to the ordinary people, Noah was rich. And Noah's words, "I do have a little bit of savings," made Rin Isaka's expression more obvious, and there was a trace of envy and resentment in her tone that was difficult to detect. "I hate rich people the most." Rin Dosaka's words were so resolute that Noah didn't know what to say. At this time, Noah remembered. Last time, when Noah went to Rin Isaka's house, because only Rin Isaka lived in the luxurious mansion, he said, "Really rich people," and as a result, he attracted Rin Isaka's resentful eyes. After that, after Archer's revelation, Noah understood how important money was for Rin Isaka, who was good at gem magic. Because, although it was a magic that even Castor thought was very interesting, and it was also a very famous magic in this era, but the extravagance caused by this magic was exaggerated. After all, gem magic required a gem as a trigger medium. But the use of a gem was a one-time use. That was to say, when Rin Isaka used a gem, the gem would disappear because of the magic to cast to use it. In this way, every time Rin Isaka, he would lose a lot of money. Because of this, Rin Osaka was always in a tight financial situation due to the demand for gemstones, the cost of purchasing them, and so on. She was especially sensitive to money. Therefore, when Rin Isaka met Fujita, the jeweler, her eyes shined. One could imagine how much resentment Noah's words had incurred from this girl who was particularly sensitive to money. "Anyway, before the church fixes this place, I don't think I can continue to live here." Noah changed the topic and said with some annoyance, "It seems that I have to rent a new place." Hearing this, Rin Enben's ears suddenly twitched. Immediately after, the fake smile on his face brightened up, and he smiled brilliantly. "Ah, Mr. Noah, are you looking for a place to live?" Seeing Rin Isaka's change of expression and bright smile, Noah almost subconsciously became vigilant. "Is there a problem?" "Of course, no problem." Rin Isaka, with a beautiful and elegant smile, began to approach Noah with unusual enthusiasm. "Actually, I have a good place to introduce to you." Hearing this, Noah immediately understood Rin Isaka's plan. As he backed away from Rin Isaka, the corner of his mouth twitched. "The good place you're talking about, don't tell me it's..." Rin Isaka smiled sweetly. That smile was like a devil who hid his malice and made others lose their vigilance while slowly inducing them to fall into depravity. Then, Rin Osaka said, "That's right. Didn't you say my place is good?" At this point, there was no need to explain. This Rin Isaka was definitely trying to take advantage of Noah. Noah was speechless. "Are you sure it's okay for an outsider like me to live in the Isaka family's headquarters? It's just that our partnership is still ongoing. During this period, I can still spare a room," Rin Anaka said in a sales tone. Her face was right in front of Noah, and her beautiful eyes were curved into crescents because of her happiness. "Anyway, you're just looking for a temporary place to live. Plus, we're partners. If we live together, don't you think it'll be more convenient? That way, they would be able to stay together for a longer period of time, which would prevent them from being picked off one by the enemy. If there were any urgent matters, they could also inform each other in the shortest amount of time. This would also make it very convenient for them to act together." That was what Rin Isaka said. Looking at Rin Isaka's smiling face, Noah became more and more speechless. In the end, he sighed. "If that's your plan, fine, just give me 3 rooms." 3 rooms? Rin Enben paused for a moment, then seemed to understand Noah's plan. He glanced at Saber, who was hugging Tosakura tightly and remaining silent. Needless to say, it was obvious who the other 2 rooms were for. "There's no need for 2 rooms," Saber said. "I'll share a room with Sakura." "Really?" Noah was puzzled. "But you can't spiritualize, right?" "Yes." Saber couldn't spiritualize. Servants who weren't Saber couldn't spiritualize. Chapter 753. Afterwards, Rin and Osaka notified the church and asked the church's supervisor to suppress the situation of the apartment. He also promised that the apartment would be repaired. Only then did the commotion calm down. Because Mamadara Sakura still hadn't woken up, Noah and the others didn't stay outside any longer. Instead, under Rin's invitation, they went straight to the Nagasaka family's mansion. Originally, both Rin Enbin and Tama Tanjing had to go to school. Today was not a holiday. However, Tama Tanjing was still unconscious, so she could not go to school. However, Rin Enbin's words were clear. Now, Rin Enbin could only bring Noah and the rest to his house. After designating 2 empty rooms for Noah and Tama Tanjing, he took his backpack and went to school. He was probably going to help Tama Tanjing apply for leave. To be honest, Noah was the most speechless at Rin Enbin's actions. The purpose of a magician's existence was to find a way to reach the origin, not to fight. Therefore, instead of saying that a magician was a warrior, it was better to say that a magician was a scholar, a researcher. Under such circumstances, the magician had to have a special place similar to a laboratory where he could study magic. Magicians called this place the magic workshop. Without a doubt, a magician's workshop was as important as a researcher's laboratory. Although it was not to the extent that no one was allowed to enter, it was not to the extent that people could simply barge in. In addition, magicians would generally set up all kinds of spells and barriers in their magic workshops. Some magicians would directly lead the enemy into their workshop during battle and set up traps to snipe the enemy. Therefore, the magic workshop could be said to be a magician's last fortress. Rin Enbin's workshop was definitely in Enbin's house. As a magician with a long history, Enbin's house would definitely have all sorts of magic secrets. Moreover, the foundation of magic was concealment. Therefore, for a magician, although it was not a taboo, it was definitely not a good thing to allow others to barge into their house. However, Rin Enbin just left Noah and Saber in Enbin's house, which was really shocking. If something went wrong and Noah and Saber, who had the highest resistance to magic, accidentally came into contact with some important spell or barrier, causing the magic itself to be disintegrated, Rin and Osaka would be in deep trouble. Was Rin Enbin not worried about this? Of course, Noah did not think about it. From another point of view, he was also unreasonable as he was protecting Tama Tanjing and Saber. From this point of view, Noah and Rin Enbin were jackals of the same tribe. Without a choice, Noah could only let Saber take Tama Tanjing to rest in her room and tell Saber not to run around. Then he followed Rin Enbin and left Enbin's house. Rin Hasaka, who noticed that Noah had caught up to him, stopped in his tracks and asked curiously. "Why are you following me? I want to ask you, what do you mean by doing things your own way?" Noah said helplessly. "Now, Archer is not by your side, aren't you afraid of being taken advantage of by other masters and servants?" "That's impossible, right?" Rin Enbin was still confused. "It's daytime now. And then? Do you want to say that no master or servant will come to trouble you in the daytime?" Noah looked at Rin Enbin. "I can't believe you can still say something like that after Castor's example." Rin Anaka seemed to have just remembered Castor's matter, and his face became pale. "I forgot," Noah almost stumbled and fell to the ground. Forgot? How could he forget such an important thing? Well, it was indeed a good reason. For Rin Enbin, who would only drop the ball at the most critical moment, this reason was really good. Well, anyway, I still have the command seal. If something happens, I can call Archer back. Rin Enbin was trying to cover up his gaffe. He emphasized it with a bit of sophistry. Besides, your servant is not by your side, right? Noah suddenly smiled. Are you sure you want to compare with me? Rin Enbin was suddenly speechless. That's right. Comparing himself with Noah was the most stupid thing. Even if the servant was not by his side, Noah, who could confront Saber and Berserker, could also deal with other masters and servants. As for Rin Tozaka, although he was also an excellent magician, he was still no match for the spirit of a great hero who had once been a hero in his previous life. Even if the other side was just a spirit clone in the form of a servant, it was still the same. I understand. Rin Enbin could only say with a dejected voice. Then I'll trouble you to send me to school. Well. Noah shrugged. It's no trouble. After that, a man and a woman walked side by side in the direction of Suigunhara Academy. Because Rin Dosaka had gone to Noah's apartment to discuss Tong Sakura's matter, and he also had a battle with Castor, now the time was actually a bit tight. Under such circumstances, Noah and Rin Enbin both appropriately quickened their pace. Oh, right. Rin Enbin suddenly frowned. Why isn't Ryder by your side? From the beginning, Ryder was not in the apartment, so Castor unscrupulously broke into Noah's apartment. If Ryder was on alert, even if it couldn't prevent this situation, it should be able to inform Noah in advance and tell Noah that there was an enemy attack. Moreover, since the morning, even when Castor was fighting, Ryder did not appear. In addition, Noah personally admitted that Ryder was not by his side now, so Rin Enbin couldn't help but wonder. Hearing Rin Enbin's words, Noah narrowed his eyes. I asked Ryder to find someone. Find someone? Rin Enbin was stunned. Yes. Noah said with a blank expression. I asked Ryder to find Tong Ying. Rin Enbin's face changed, then she clenched her teeth, and her eyes were filled with strong emotions. Tong Ying. One of the three families in Fuyuki City, the real leader of the Tong family, and the nominal grandfather of Tong Ying. At the same time, he was also the culprit that made Tong Ying live a life of misery for more than 10 years. If it wasn't for the mysterious power that has been protecting Tong Ying, Rin Enbin didn't even dare to think about what would happen to Tong Ying now. When she thought of this, Rin Enbin's emotions were surging. She took a deep breath and suppressed it. If you find Tong Ying, what are you going to do? Nothing. Noah replied faintly. Just to avenge Sakura. Rin Enbin was silent. After a long time, Noah heard Rin Enbin's murmur. Why do you want to do this for Sakura? Hearing this, Noah couldn't help but be a little dazed. Thinking back to the first time they met, the girl who felt inferior, negative, and whose face was filled with unease all the time, recalling the girl who begged Noah to touch her in order to replenish the magical power of the scabbard in her body, recalling the girl who danced with him at the ball, was extremely confused about the future, and asked him questions. Recalling the girl who showed him a gentle smile in the archery department of Suechu and Gakuin Academy, recalling the girl's past and the scabbard that he had lost in the girl's body, Noah seemed to feel something and made such a statement. Perhaps, another reason I came to this world is to meet Sakura. Who knows? Rin Enbin suddenly looked at Noah in a daze. Looking at Noah's bitter smile, she didn't know why, but she blushed and deliberately snorted, then turned her head away. Even if you say such a cool line, it doesn't make you look that handsome. After saying this, Rin Enbin quickened her pace, as if she didn't want Noah to see her blushing face. Noah could only let out a bitter laugh and quickly chased after him. Chapter 754. After sending Rin and Osaka to Suigunhara Academy, Noah immediately left. Although there were examples like Castor who would launch an attack in broad daylight, in a school with so many people around, no matter which master or servant it was, they wouldn't dare to make a move so blatantly. In Suigunhara Academy, Rin and Osaka was still safe. Even if there was an accident, Rin and Osaka could still summon Archer to her side with her command spell. Therefore, Noah didn't need to protect her, and he didn't have that kind of obligation. Escorting Rin and Osaka to the academy was already benevolent enough. It was impossible for him to stay there and guard Rin and Osaka the whole day. Therefore, after Rin and Osaka entered the academy, Noah directly left. Seeing the stunned look of the surrounding students, Noah couldn't help but laugh. In any case, Rin and Osaka was still a young lady that everyone looked forward to. Everyone would be dumbfounded if an unknown man from outside the school sent such a charming and idol-like existence to the school. Noah only knew about it when Tong Ying mentioned it in the archery department. Rin and Osaka actually had such a side to her in the academy. However, he had to admit. In terms of appearance, Rin Enosaka did have the qualifications to be a popular and dignified young lady. Although her nature was like a little devil, and she often dropped the ball at the most critical moment, her curse-like physique made people not dare to compliment her. Noah ignored the stunned look of the surrounding students, left Suigunhara Academy, and walked in the direction of Enosaka's residence. However, just as Noah passed by a commercial street, an unexpected voice with full of surprise called out to him. "Isn't this the big brother from the other day?" The person called Noah was like a clear drop of water falling on the surface of the water, very light, and full of cheerfulness and happiness. Judging from her voice, she was probably still underage. At best, she was around 13 or 14 years old. However, when he heard this voice, Noah's heart tightened. He suddenly turned his head and looked towards the source of the voice. On the other side of the street, a little girl with long hair that was more beautiful than the snow was standing there. She was wearing a snow jacket, a snow hat, and snow boots. She looked like a little elf that had just been born in the snow. At this moment, the girl was happily raising one of her hands above her head and waving it at Noah. "Big brother. We meet again." The girl's cheerful and cute appearance made the pedestrians around her subconsciously stop in their tracks, their gazes converging on the other party. In particular, some of the men and women had stars in their eyes. There was no other way. That slightly immature-looking girl was simply too cute. She was so cute that even the most delicate dolls and mannequins couldn't compare to her. Under such circumstances, the surrounding pedestrians had no idea at all. 2 days ago, that snow-white girl had just used an innocent smile to order her most loyal bodyguard to kill Noah and his group without mercy. Yes. The girl who looked like an angel was, in fact, a demon who would kill anyone with a cute smile on her face without hesitation. Impressively, it was Berserker's master. Ilyasful von Erzberen. One of the 3 families that created the Holy Grail War, the Erzberen family. Encountering Ilya on such a busy road, Noah couldn't hold back and showed a trace of surprise. "Ilyasful?" Hearing how Noah addressed her, the smile on Ilya's cute face slowly disappeared and was replaced by a puffed-up cheeks and a very dissatisfied expression. Lifting her little feet and walking towards Noah, Ilya spoke to Noah in dissatisfaction. "You can just call me Ilya." Seeing Ilya walking in front of him puffing up her cheeks and pretending to be angry, Noah almost lost his vigilance against this master who had a servant that couldn't be ignored. At that moment, Noah asked almost reflexively. "Why are you here?" "I came here to play." Ilya answered without hesitation. The expression on her face changed from dissatisfaction to happiness in an instant. "It's too boring to stay in the castle, so I came out to play in the town." "Castle?" Noah asked in confusion. "Ah. Big brother, have you forgotten?" Ilya put her little hands behind her back and slightly leaned her upper body towards Noah's direction. She smiled until her eyes narrowed. "Didn't I say that in the depths of the forest, there is our Erzberen villa?" After Ilya said this, Noah remembered. Indeed, Ilya did say such a sentence. But Ilya also said that it was only a villa. Since when did a villa become a castle? Or, to Ilya, the castle in the depths of the forest was just a villa? So that's how it is. Noah's mouth twitched. "You are the real rich person, hmm?" Ilya immediately tilted her head. "Rich person? No, don't mind it." Noah looked around and said. He looked around and seemed to be a little absent-minded. "Big brother, are you looking for Berserker?" Ilya seemed to see through Noah's thoughts and suddenly smiled. "Don't worry, Ilya didn't bring Berserker out today." "Didn't bring Berserker out with you?" Noah finally frowned and stared at Ilya. "You ran out alone without bringing a servant? Aren't you afraid of being attacked by other masters?" "I can't help it. Berserker is too overprotective. If I bring him out, he will definitely go berserk on the streets," Ilya said matter-of-factly. "In that case, I won't be able to play anymore, right?" Hearing Ilya's words, Noah wanted to correct 2 points. 1. Berserker isn't overprotective, that's called going berserk. 2. If Berserker goes berserk on a crowded street, it will not only cause you, the master, to be unable to play with him, but it will also cause a lot of unnecessary casualties. And Ilya's words proved that this cute little girl didn't care about 1 or 2 lives at all. For Ilya, when Berserker went berserk, what she really cared about was whether she could play or not, and not other people's lives. Sure enough, this little girl was a magician with the appearance of an angel and the heart of a demon. Big Brother doesn't seem to have brought a servant, right? Ilya curiously looked around Noah and suddenly thought of something, and her eyes lit up. Could it be that Big Brother also came to play? I'm sorry to disappoint you, but I'm not here to play. Noah rubbed his eyebrows. I'm just sending Tozaka to school. Her servant isn't with her. Send Ling to school? Ilya immediately bit one of her fingers and puffed up her cheeks. In other words, Big Brother will only accompany Ling and not accompany me? Accompany you? Noah sighed. Accompany you for what? To fight? No, I'm here to play today. Ilya said with a smile. So, you have to accompany me to play. Huh? Noah was stunned and almost couldn't keep up with this development. Why do I have to accompany you to play? Isn't that obvious? Ilya showed the cutest smile Noah had ever seen and said such a sentence. Because, I like Big Brother very much. In the surroundings, the pedestrians who had been paying attention to Ilya heard this sentence, and many people fell on the street, hit the street lamps, and some even collided with each other and fell to the ground. The remaining pedestrians who weren't crushed by Ilya's confession fell silent for a moment. Then, they looked at Noah with murderous and disdainful gazes. Noah broke out in cold sweat. What kind of development is this? You're tuning into the Journey of the Soul YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.